The road to the championship continues here in the place where everything is bigger. We welcome you to the virtual Texas Motor Speedway and round 34, the Galaxy Cup Series, as they progress through the round of 8 in these 2020 playoffs. So live coverage on 3Y TV. We're along the ride with you is Andre Grambush and myself, Kenneth Bueno, giving you coverage all playoffs long. And Andre, to begin, we approach this race with an interesting situation coming off of Kansas last week with playoff drivers in a massive hole, the most. And now there's just 2 more races to patch it all up.
Yeah, interesting is a way to put it. You don't normally expect to see nearly every playoff driver encounter an issue in a single race, but it's pretty much what we saw last week at Kansas. The race results from last week was Matthew Woods in the 48 grabbing the win, Jack Durham in second, Chad Edwards, the rookie, the debut performance in the podium, P3, Brian Samuelson, P4, and P5 was Jason S. Taylor. From P6 on back, Ken's got you.
And it's relatively easy to see just how much this trouble was for the playoff drivers when you look at this race results graphic and you see the only playoff driver in the top 10 in that race was Cameron Caldwell in the number 12. You see him directly in the middle of that top 10 graphic highlighted in red. But it was Matthew Woods who took his first victory of the season after a nail-biting run to the finish against Jack Durham. Now you're looking at the playoff standings, and this is the glimpse of what the grid is going to look like. And tonight should be the race where this grid will start to take its shape further, but they're not changing much from last week, apart from maybe Cameron Caldwell, now gaining a little bit of points along the way. But Andre, at least within this group, when you look about Kevin Steele, maybe Christopher Hamann, and even further back of these drivers that can still gain these points, what is needed now for each and every one of those playoff hopefuls to carry that momentum now when you go into Martinsville next week and try to cap off the round of the Championship 4?
I think the biggest thing is just going to be consistency. This is a track where the more your tires wear, the more difficult it is to drive, especially in turns 1 and 2. We're going to see a lot of incidents. We're going to see a lot of single car accidents, people getting up into the wall, people getting a little bit loose on exit. So if these guys that are in the outside of the playoffs there can just keep it alive to the end, keep their car going, keep it fresh, you never know what's going to happen. And if you look at that grid, the furthest driver in the round of 8 outside the window is only 21 points back. That is potentially something that they could make up within a race if all the cards fell in their favor. So it really is anybody's game tonight.
Could be anyone's game here in the Lone Star State, and now you're looking at all the cars right there on the grid on pit road, and that means we're going to get to your starting grid. See exactly where your favorite driver or every other driver will be starting from the grid tonight. Previous race winner in March, Bryson Ixamal comes back to the Lone Star State with pole at a 27.960. He starts first. Right alongside him, a current rookie in this series who made his statement at Las Vegas, Jimmy Costarellos, will start the grid from second. Looking back to row number 2, where Rick Wineland will come from third, and Kevin Steele, playoff driver trying to look for a better run tonight, will start from fourth. Ryan Samuelson will be 5th, Dakota Null will be 6th into row number 3, and Zach Probst, Cameron Caldwell, and Cameron Stone will be 7th, 8th, and 9th, respectively. All of them trying to get points from the run last week at Kansas, where a lot of them did have a lot of struggles. Then back to 10th, Adam Benefiel is in the exit of row number 5, then Joseph Lester, row number 6. Rich Pachuco will be row number 6 in 11th and 12th. Back to 13th, 14th, Brandon Pierce, Wayne Grassi will file out row number 7. Then Alex Princeton and Cody Bird will be 15th and 16th, respectively. Comer Christopher Hamann will start the 17 car from 17th tonight. Dalton Mobley returns to the series. He'll start from 18th onto the grid. Kyle Martinson making his first start in the Galaxy Cup Series. Will roll off from 19th. Jeremy Morrison will be 20th. Chad Edwards 21st. Ryan McDaniel 22nd. Then Jason Taylor, Patrick Muse, Kyle Ammon in 25th. Tyler Pisoniant in his first start as well. Nicholas Weatherby, Andrew Russo 28th. And then filing out this 31-car grid, Randy Drumhiller, Damaris Secondbottom, and Preston McRae. So those will be all the 31 drivers that'll line up this field tonight from Texas Motor Speedway. You see the pace car now into 3 and 4, something we're going to be covering a lot throughout this evening. The banking on this track, about 22 degrees up, or 20 degrees in 1 and 2, 24 degrees in 3 and 4. Pace car will make its way down a pit road and will continue the round of 8 with Hixenbaugh and Costarellos at the top of this field. We are green and playoff racing from the Lone Star State.
That first lap of many as Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to take the point single file for the first three. You got Bryson Hixenbaugh, and behind him, you got that 25 machine, Jimmy Costarellos, and Eric Wineland behind him. But further back behind that lead pack of three cars, we got quite a fray. We got some 2 wide, 3 wide action a little bit further back in the pack. Everybody fighting for that track position early on.
That's something we're going to be seeing over the course of the evening, as we saw, just like at Las Vegas, places like Kansas, this package does not give you any sort of leeway for any sort of freedom around these cars in these opening laps when everyone has all the fresh rubber and they're all packed together like this. As Kevin Steele was loose in front of the field and is going to go around, and Ryan Samuelson to the outside wall, and a BenSound also gets collected. Huge wreck on the back straightaway. Lap number 1 will bring out the first yellow of the evening. Lots of drivers were collected in that. I believe Steele was able to escape with minimal damage at best, but a lot of drivers into this one as you take a look at the replay, Andre.
Just a little bit loose coming out of the corner, and that's what happens, man. You get loose in front of the field, and the drivers behind you, especially on a corner as tight as the exit 2, just have nowhere to go. Drivers came across the radio and called the situation a parking lot, and I would say that's a pretty apt description. Chaos on lap 1. I mean, we really didn't expect to see anything happen quite this early, but it looks like, surprisingly, a lot of the guys involved didn't quite get race-ending damage. A lot of guys got a few scrapes here and there, but a lot of these guys, I think, are able to get back out on the track.
And it started right here on the exit of turn number 2. Kevin Steele got loose right by himself. Then Ryan Samuelson gets in there, and then I believe he gets turned here and clipped up to the outside wall. Cameron Stone almost had a moment there as the 36 of Dakota Nall gets collected. Adam Benefield gets turned in the process. He also gets collected in here as well. With lots of drivers into this main group. And you did say it right. The parking lot here is, oh man, the 24 gets in there very, very late. That was Nicholas Weatherby.
You hate to see it for Adam Benefield. All he did wrong there was slow down to try and avoid the wreck. And unfortunately, the cars behind him just sort of accordioned. You got the onboard cam right here. This is behind the number 88 machine. As they drive into this parking lot, you can see the 24 veering down the track. Some great evasive maneuvers until Adam Benefield was right there in the middle of the track, nowhere for anybody to go. Unfortunate circumstances for everybody involved early on.
So that brings our first yellow of the evening. Here's a look from Ryan Samuelson, just right in front of him. Kevin Steele gets loose, and then at that point he gets tagged and has nowhere to go but the outside wall, and then just trying to hold the brake, hoping that nobody else gets into him. And luckily, at least for his case, no one else was collected with him. They were all able to get by. So that brings our first yellow on the first lap of this race here at Texas. I don't believe this does take out a lot of playoff drivers. That was mostly a non-playoff wreck, other than maybe Kevin Steele, who does have a little bit of damage to the rear end, but doesn't look like too much, at least to affect his entire race. He will still be back there, and maybe at worst, maybe one lap down on the racetrack, or maybe even more. But he's probably going to exit pit road with a head of steam, going to try to get back up to this field and continue his playoff run. Now he exits pit road, so he's going to lap himself around, go back to the back of the field, and try to continue his race with some minimal damage, at least, from that incident. Well, I did talk about the banking on this racetrack shortly before we went green, and at least with this track info, it is very, very interesting. A track like Texas Motor Speedway, it opened in 1996. It was actually its first race, a debut race, taking in place of the North Wilkesboro race at the time. Turns 1 and 2, I mentioned, was 20 degrees, and in 3 and 4, 24 degrees. So you're seeing a lot more checking up with the cars in 1 and 2 as opposed to in turns 3 and 4. And lots of things to really talk about with this racetrack. A repave in 2017 has made it to what it looks like right now on the iRacing service. Recently released just the past couple of months ago. So that's interesting to see. These drivers at least a little bit trying to get used to this new sort of a racetrack and this new setup on the repave. But got a couple of drivers in the garage. It's unbelievable what happened on lap number 1.
Well, that's kind of a struggle with this repave that nobody really talks about. With this repave, turn 2 gets tighter and tighter very early on into a run. Most tracks, it takes, 15, 20 laps before you really start to notice the tire wear. But at this track, 5, 6 laps in, your car is already starting to get tight. So a lot of these drivers are setting these cars up to be as loose as possible early on so that once the tires wear, it's not plowing tight when they come through 1 and 2. But as a result, when they are on fresh tires for those first few laps, the car is really almost undrivably loose. And I think that might have been the cause of the incident we saw early on. So, this repave, a lot of people are kind of mixed on it, but I really think this repave makes it so that you have to really drive this track and know not only the track, but your car and your setup as well. We did get an extended yellow there, Ken. Not entirely sure what happened. It might have just been the admins giving some of the drivers involved more time to get caught up to the field, or possibly something happened that we didn't quite catch. But regardless, the extended yellow is over. Our additional lap is over, and the lights are back off on the pace car.
So we'll take one more loop around. You just got a glimpse of which drivers were down pit road had damage. Christopher Hamann, though, went all the way to the back of the field, got put one lap down, so he's sitting 24th. I believe he just has a little bit of damage to the front end of that 17 machine. He actually does have a little crinkle on the left front, so he's going to try to at least patch that up now, or at least try to do so within the rest of this race. Maybe another yellow could be in the looks, and he could get that fixed and try to continue his run. Already a tough run and some damage to pick along for two of the playoff drivers out of the 8, or at least that are running for tonight. Again, Jonathan Delaney was one of the playoff drivers. He was 7th before we entered this race. He is not here tonight, so he will lose points along the way and possibly would be in a must-win situation going into Martinsville next week. Hopefully he is all well. Hopefully it was just something that he must have missed this race for, but we hope to see you back on track at the Paperclip next week. But meanwhile, we're back to the front where the pace car will lead the rest of the field doubled up behind Bryson Ixamal, Jimmy Costarelos. Practically the rest of this field did not change order under that green flag sitting in a 1 and 2. And we're back underway as Ixamal is the first to step on the right foot, to step on the right pedal at least, and he's back underway. And we're all single file now going into turn number 1.
And a little bit of contact before we even got to turn 1. That was the 162, Zach Probst, applying the pressure to the number 12 of Cameron Caldwell. Cameron Caldwell, of course, being one of the main benefactors of the kind of incident-filled race last week. He was able to keep it clean, gained a lot of points in the playoffs, and got himself inside of the top 4 for the time being. And now looking to gain some more positions as he is motoring past the 31 of Eric Wineland. Now applying the pressure on the 25. He's going to get to the quarter panel and side draft him. They're side by side for second going into 1 and 2.
And Caldwell will take over second from Costarelos. You're on board with Hicksam on the rear end, and now he's going to look to the left to where he'll find the 12 machine, and they'll be side by side down the back straightaway into turn number 3. And what a story for Cameron Caldwell. He was struggling throughout practically the entirety of these playoffs, but we were talking about just how much he endured in terms of the wrecks, had issues in most of the races through the playoffs in the round of 16 most notably, and of course maybe even translating into the round of 12, and then you go to the round of 8 where this happens at Kansas last week, where all the playoff drivers have struggles apart from him, and he's really the one to gain the most out of all of that. And now he's gaining even more as he's taking over the race lead, and Hicksam is now going to have to trail as they're battling for third on back.
It was a really great restart by that 12 car, man. I mean, to go up from, I believe, back in P5 all the way up to the lead in a matter of a lap. And honestly, he's starting to get a little bit of a gap between him and Bryson Hicksonbaugh. Looks like Hicksonbaugh's nose is getting a little bit loose, kind of losing front grip a little bit as they make their way through 1 and 2. But that 12 car just looks planted. Like he can put that car anywhere he wants it. And that, as a driver, that's a great feeling to have that confidence in your car, to be able to run whatever lane you have to run. And right now, I think Cameron Caldwell's primary objective is just going to be make sure he stays in front of the 63, run the same line as the 63, and disrupt the air behind him. Make sure he's giving that arrow push to everybody behind him, and just turn laps until we progress a little bit further into the stage.
And unlike what we saw at Kansas, Andre, where you had multiple lines, you were able to scour up to the wall, you're able to go all the way to the bottom, especially on the fresh rubber when you had those opening runs, and you were able to use practically every line of the racetrack to make something work or get a run on the driver in front of you. Here, it's the exact opposite. You don't have the lanes up top to really help you. You don't have those options up there. All you have is the groove all the way to the bottom, all the way down to the white line. That seems to be the best route for every single driver here tonight as you're looking on board with Hicksam. Now loses a spot to fellow playoff driver Zach Probst. So in this top 3, all 3 of them are playoff drivers. Eric Wineland will break all that group up in 4th, trying to catch the 63 along the way. 3-car train, but it's Caldwell up front, trying to run away.
And all this battling between the 63 and the 162, Bryson Hixenbaugh, Zach Probst, and also Eric Wineland joining the fray there, is allowing the 12 car to get further and further away. He went from about a 1 car length lead now up to about 4 car lengths. And the battling behind him is not subsided yet. It looks like Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to be applying the pressure into 3 and 4. Maybe taking the high line here. Nope, he's going to dip back down in line. Eric Wineland on the super low line. He had 2 tires on the apron there. Somehow kept that thing going in the right direction. But right now, Cameron Caldwell is the car to beat. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. Does Cameron Caldwell just have a short run setup and he's going to fade later on? Or did he figure something out with his setup and he's going to be the car to beat all night long?
Yeah, and that could be the case with these open setups here in the Galaxy Cup Series. You could really tune your car to any sort of situation you want. We did see that at Kansas so much, where we had drivers like Matthew Woods who were very, very strong on the long runs, especially when the tire wear started to kick in. You had a lot more separation on the racetrack. That's where a driver like Matthew Woods in that setup was able to pounce. And you saw a couple other drivers who were faltering in the long runs. They had a lot of short run speed, and they were able to really gain traction in those opening runs. And then as soon as that kicked in, as soon as the laps continued to wind down, they started to fall a little bit further back. You're looking at a battle for 7th between Wayne Grassi, the 37 of Jason Taylor, and Jimmy Costarellos, who started the grid from 2nd. He has now fallen back to 9th, almost 10th now, with the 22 of Jeremy Morrison trying to get by at the moment. But still single file for the most part. Everyone's kind of filed themselves through. Not really much to see on the racetrack at the moment. So I think right now they're really just trying to get a feel for the track, what they really feel, of how kind of flatter this is compared to what we saw at Kansas. And as Hixenbaugh tries to go to the bottom of Zach Probst.
And you got quite a bit of help from Eric Wineland there. A good shove that kind of helped him to get around the 162. Now he's going to be towing Eric Wineland. Possibly 2 positions are going to be lost here for the 162. But again, this lead pack is starting to break away a little bit. And I would say you don't need to be leading the race right now. A lot of these guys, they can kind of get away with just having some good track position, running clean laps, and just staying in the game. But honestly, behind them, the gap is sort of closing. I thought these guys were breaking away, but now that I'm looking at it, it really is closing the gap. Wayne Grassi was a few car lengths back from the car ahead just a lap or 2 ago. Now, right on his bumper and trying to progress up through the field. And you can see these guys ducking in and out of their lanes, going high, going low, just trying to see if they can get a run wherever they can, because it is so difficult to get that track position to make a pass at a track like this. And they're just trying to do everything they can. But ultimately, when they get to these corners, the bottom is the preferred lane, and that's where they got to be. Speaking of the bottom being the preferred lane, look who's down there now. That's Bryson Hixenbaugh in the 63 machine, and he is going to power by the number 12 for the lead. So Cameron Caldwell going to fall back to 2nd. Bryson Hixenbaugh, your pole sitter, back to the front.
He found his opening on the back straightaway, and he was able to make it stick in a turn 3. Not really much for Cameron Caldwell really to do there, so he loses the spot. He's still there, though, with him as they kind of in a 2-car breakaway with Zach Probst and Eric Wineland fighting for 3rd. And just a reminder that if you want to find out which drivers are those playoff drivers, you want an indicator just to make sure you know which driver you're looking at, especially running for the championship tonight at Martinsville and further on onto Phoenix. You can see the red windshield banners, the red splitters, and the red spoilers on all those race cars. That indicates that they are the playoff drivers for in the 2020 Galaxy Cup Series season. All the other drivers that are non-playoff drivers are just highlighted in the standard of black spoilers, splitters, and the windshield banner. And of course, on the ticker on the left-hand side, and of course, the top just a little bit, you can see all the playoff drivers are outlined in red. So you can find where all the playoff drivers are in the field, and you see the top 3 all filtered in red as Zach Probst is able to get the better of Eric Wineland to step into 3rd. There's a big battle behind the 2 leaders, as now you see Joseph Lester. First time we're seeing him in the front of this field tonight, as there's almost contact. It got very tight and also got loose off the corner as well, as they were side by side. He's going to have to hit the reset button, try one more time, and he's got a lot of drivers though behind, so any mistake and you're getting freight trained by the guys behind you.
It's absolutely right. On a track like this where the bottom is the preferred line, once you get stuck on the high side, it can be really challenging to find an opening to get back down there and stop losing track position. Luckily, Eric Wineland, when that contact was made, actually kind of came out the better half of that. He actually didn't really lose any track position. He's still right there with Zach Probst. Joseph Lester lost a little bit of time, though. He got tight initially, like you'd mentioned, and then once he got to the exit of the corner, he was loose. So that's got to be a terrible feeling as a driver when your car is just doing a little bit of everything. It's not just tight, it's not just loose, it's tight in some places, loose in others, and that makes it really hard to throw the wrench at and really figure out. And That's a challenge at this track with this repave. I mentioned it earlier, but these turns 1 and 2 are some of the most challenging corners I think you're going to find on a mile and a half.
And just an update, the 88 of Andrew Russo, who made his first start last week at Kansas, says one car is into the inside wall. That's Jason Taylor in the 37. Caution is out for the second time tonight. He's able to back it down, keep it stopped in the middle of the track. Everyone scatters around. That's enough to bring out the yellow flag. This time on lap number 23, going to take a replay. This is off of turn 2. And Andre, right before the broadcast, we were talking about how much of a trouble spot the exit of 2 would be for the drivers, and it was for the 37. I believe Jeremy Morrison was also near him around at the time that he went around. He got loose off of turn 2, went straight down at the inside wall. Here's an aerial shot. No help from anyone behind, just plain old loose. And actually, contact with Jeremy Morrison, who got loose in front of him. So actually, there was help for those 2 drivers, and they get some damage along the way.
It was very reminiscent of the first caution we had, where it was just a driver getting loose right in front of another driver and just not quite having the time to react to that situation happening in front of you. So we're on board right now with Morrison, and you can see him get a little bit loose. He counter steers, gets it corrected, but then of course he gets that nudge from behind, and then he's once again just kind of along for the ride. So a little bit of contact with that inside wall. And while that's going on, the leaders are pretty much all making their way down pit road. Not very surprising. Lap 24 at Texas feels like lap 40 anywhere else in terms of tire wear. So these guys are going to be anxious to come down pit road, get 4 fresh Goodyears, maybe top off on fuel so they can maybe get away with a little bit less fuel later on. And right now, they're all sliding into their stalls, hoping for some clean stops.
Sabah, who led them all down, will most likely lead them all out if he has a good pit stop. If nothing goes wrong from there, he will occupy the first pit box because, of course, since he got the pole for tonight's event, he will be at advantage there at the front with that 63 placard all the way at the head of the pit boxes. And out of pit road, it will still be the 63, but for second, it was merely tight between the 12 of Cameron Caldwell and the 31 of Eric Wineland. They were very close together, but the 12 of Cameron Caldwell gets the edge there for second. So Wineland will have to settle for third on this next restart, but at least maybe the better for the 31. He'll most likely be on the bottom as long as they shape out correctly. I don't believe anyone else stayed out on the racetrack. Pretty sure everybody on the lead lap did go down pit road, and all the drivers a lap down are still yet to make their stop, so they will go down pit road, and we'll have Bryson Ixabal shape back to the front of this pack. When we go back to the restart, maybe on lap number 27 or possibly 28 if we get another delayed green from the admins like they did the first time around. Just to let you know that you can now visit the Galaxy Cup Series on Twitter, filled with live updates, news, and everything else happening around the series, all condensed into 280 characters. You can visit their profile by searching at Galaxy Cup League on Twitter for all the latest news surrounding the league.
You know, Ken, I'm a little bit surprised nobody tried to take 2 tires and gain some track position just to see how it works. Because obviously, at a track like this, everybody's going to be taking 4 tires. So if you take 2, you're guaranteeing yourself track position. But where that becomes a little bit more uncertain is how is the car going to handle? How is 2 tires going to feel? And honestly, if I was a driver, now is the time to take 2 and figure that out. Because if you take 2 now and it doesn't work, then you know not to do it later. Or if it does work, then you know you got that ace up your sleeve for later down the line. But it seems like nobody was quite willing to experiment. Everybody taking 4 tires and pretty much just taking their routine stops. So not quite as much strategy experimenting early on as I would have expected.
And that could have been something that some drivers would have done, but I think at least with this 23 or so lap run that they had, of course, with the tires wearing, I think everybody in the field is having that thought of just going down pit road, getting 4 fresh tires, and just being on equal footing with the rest of the field as opposing to trying 2 and maybe risking something, and could be possibly detrimental if they're not able to handle it right. But also still very early in this race. We still have a long way to go until the stage 1 conclusion. Stages will go like this. Our stage 1 will conclude at lap number 105. Our second stage will conclude at lap number 210. And then from then on, we'll go all the way to the checkered flag, lap number 334, which will signify the end of tonight's event here at Texas Motor Speedway. So still a long way to go, Andre. So I think if we're still looking for experimentation for a lot of these drivers, I think it's still definitely within the cards. If we get more yellows like this, especially with the routine we've had where drivers are getting loose and maybe we're getting those smaller runs in between mixed in with those yellows, it could be that opportunity for some drivers to maybe take their shot at getting 2 or maybe even getting none, staying out on the racetrack and trying different things to see what could work at the end of the race if everything goes to plan for them. So field will be behind Bryson Nixonball once again. Cameron Caldwell, who we saw was very strong in the short runs. I'm eager to see what he will do on this next restart, even though he's occupying the outside lane. He has been very aggressive and very effective on these short runs, so I'm very curious to see whether he's able to pounce up front and retake the lead from Nixonball like he did early in the first stint.
You know, I got my eye on that number 7 machine, Wayne Grassy. He has been working his way through the field all race long, and now he's starting right there in row 3. That's not too far from the front, and he's got the preferred inside line. So if all things shape out like I think they will, he's probably going to cycle up to third, possibly fourth, once they get single file. And that's going to give him a good opportunity. He can ride behind these leaders, study the lines they're running, and wait for an opportunity. And that opportunity is going to present itself soon because here comes the pace car about to pull off the track coming out of turn 4.
So our green flag will come back at lap number 28. So just like I said, when we got that yellow, initially lap number 27, 28 would be the target for the restart. And indeed, lap number 28 is that target. Bryson Nixonball and Cameron Caldwell will be the first two to lead the field back to the green flag. And Nixonball is right on the mash pedal. We are back underway from Texas.
They're too wide for second. Eric Wineland right up against the door panel of that 12. And in tow, number 7, Wayne Grassy up to P4. Working on that number 12, trying to take that podium position of third. And the 12 is barely going to slot down into the bottom lane as we ride on board with the number 7. That was quite a scary moment if you were anybody around him. But right now, Eric Wineland back to the top as the 12 car is going to fight him on the bottom. And around he goes back up into P2. The 7 car now putting 31 under fire. It seems like Eric Wineland just doesn't quite have that short run speed. And unfortunately, he hasn't had the long runs that it seems like his car prefers. So he's going to have to hope that these guys can get the green if he really wants to get that track position back and fight for it. But we got to fight for the lead, Ken. It's the number 12 once again on this short run, just showing how strong that car is in these short stints. And right as he takes the lead, the yellow flag flies. So a new leader and a caution consecutively. It's Eric Wineland. Wow. What happened there?
Wineland got turned in the entry of turn number 3. I was just about to mention it as Caldwell was trying to take over the lead from the 63 of Nixonball. This was going into turn number 3. There's the contact between Joseph Lester and the 31, and I believe one playoff driver must have gotten some damage from that. I believe Zach Probst might have had damage from that. Cameron Stone was also in the mix as well. He's also with damage on that Ford Mustang. Here's an extra look, and we were focusing on the battle up front, but everybody from 4th on back, there was the chaos. And there's damage to the 162. Everyone's scrambling around. I believe the 162 went back down to the racetrack. That's why the 57 has his damage. So another yellow to couple with the other 2 we had. Here's an onboard look from the 57 along the way into turn 3.
So they're making their way into 3 and 4. Cameron Stone has a good buffer to the cars ahead, but then once this all kicks off, Zach Probst is going to slide back down the track. And Cameron Stone didn't even spin out or really get pushed around, but he did get quite a bit of body panel damage and maybe something bent on the chassis of that machine. So he's going to have to bring it down pit road and get as much of that fixed as he possibly can. Unfortunately, Texas is very air-dependent mile and a half. We've seen just how much clean air can help or make or break your run. And so we're just going to have to see what happens with him. Another look at this incident, you can see the number 9 sliding up against the outside wall. Probst coming back up onto the track. And man, that number 9 really didn't get his brakes locked up. He kind of reversed for a good distance there, just kind of coasting, leaving the guys behind him, or I guess technically in front of him, wondering where he was going to go. That was kind of unexpected there. But we're back to live, and you're following the number 12 car, who, as we mentioned, did take the lead right before this caution flew. So I guess if you're going to take the lead and get that track position, there's no better time.
And those were the 2 drivers that we were looking at. You mentioned Wayne Grassy. You were eager to see what he was going to do on the restart. He was pushing that 12 of Cameron Caldwell and was in good position to take over second if the yellow hadn't come out into turn 3. The 7 was in the best spot to take over second and possibly continue to push Cameron Caldwell, or at least try to get by him for the race lead. And I mentioned that Cameron Caldwell was eager to see what he did on the short run. He was able to pounce on the 63's mistake off turn 2, where he kind of tapped the apron, had to slide up the track a little bit, and then the 12 was able to take the lead from there on out. I believe just barely had a bumper over that 63 when the yellow came out with Wineland and company, when the rest of them were kind of scattering to get around the wreck in turn number 3. But I'll tell you what's different here, Andre. We saw a larger group go down into pit road and a smaller group stay out. We saw the first couple leaders. You're seeing them right now in the 12 of Caldwell, the 63 of Hicksonball, and the 7 of Wayne Grassy. And I also believe the 27 of Rich Petrucco also stayed out as well. The rest of the field, even the drivers with damage, even drivers with no damage, went down pit road. So they also went to top off, maybe on fuel, maybe get some extra tires onto their race cars. So now we have a little bit of a split maybe between the drivers behind these main three, at least, or main four at the front of this field.
I'll tell you, I like that call of coming down pit road for a lot of those guys back there. This league doesn't have a tire set limit yet, so you can come down and get as many tires as you want whenever you want. If you wanted your pit crew to put 4 tires on your car, take them off, and then put them on again, you could, because there's no tire limit. So really, these guys a little bit further back, they have nothing to lose. They don't have the track position. They're already in the pack in the field. So why not get these fresh tires and try to maybe make some of that up once the green flag flies? And now also, should we get some more cautions and fuel mileage becomes a little bit more questionable than it is right now, because right now it's pretty much set in stone that I don't think they can make it. They do have a little bit of extra fuel, which you never know. It could come into play later on. So I like that call. I'll be honest.
Yeah, it could be a paying call if we get more yellows, and then the top 4, those drivers who did stay out will be forced to go down pit road at some point, because you can't make it all the way to the end here, even on this next restart. Even if you pit it now, I don't believe you can go all the way through to lap 105 and to go all the way to the end of the stage. So we would see more drivers go down pit road. We're definitely going to see these leaders go down pit road at least once through this stage. So that could allow opportunity for some drivers to save a little bit and make some moves, make some bold moves to try to get a stage win along their way. Even if you're not a playoff driver, you're still in contention for points. Even if you got eliminated, or even if you didn't make the playoff grid whatsoever at the start of the round 16, you're still fighting for points with some of your fellow drivers. And that's the great thing about racing like these, is that you have 2 separate battles on the racetrack. You see, obviously, the fight for the championship, and then you have the fight for everything else around them and all the points behind that. They're also trying to get their season underway. They're trying to get momentum on their side at the end of the season so that they can make a better run next season and have a lot more things to learn, have a lot of more experience under their belt. So that's always something to watch for when you go in leagues like this and have that separation between those two. So right now on the back straightaway, we got the 1 to green signal. Cameron Caldwell will be your race leader. Bryson Hicksonball, who started this race on the pole, will be on the outside of row number 1. Wayne Grassy, who almost took a look for second before the yellow, he will be third on the bottom of row number 2. Petrucco will be on the top of row number 2, right alongside. Then Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickenbottom, 2 playoff drivers filing out row number 3. And then you've got a scatter of non-playoff drivers before you get to Cameron Stone, who's currently sitting 12th on the board. He's got a little bit of work to do if he needs to gain some points on some drivers that, in some cases, need a lot more points than others. Pace car is down at pit road. Cameron Caldwell will be the first to lead them all, and we are back under the green flag. Hopefully no yellows from here on out, at least to the rest of the stage, as Cameron Caldwell will lead them through lap number 34.
And just a quick update as the leaders single file out. Eric Wineland came across the radio, said he is down on power as a result from the damage in that wreck. So Eric Wineland down on power. He's going to have to come down pit road eventually, see if he can get a little bit more of that damage fixed. But usually when you're down on power, that's not an easy issue to resolve. So we'll keep an eye on him throughout the race. But right now, single file for the most part up front. We've got Cameron Caldwell in that 12 machine leading the way. Bryson Hicksonball in second. Wayne Grassy up in that podium position. The first non-playoff driver in this single file run. But then behind him, you got another non-playoff driver. You've got the 27 machine. That is Rich Petrucco, who has been really fast these last few weeks and really has been putting himself in position to maybe nab a win towards the end of the season. So we'll keep an eye on him as well. But behind him, under fire from Damaris Hickenbottom, who is a playoff driver in that beautiful orange 09 car. I love that scheme. I love the rims on that thing. Up there in P5, trying to catch up to Rich Petrucco.
They're all starting to pack up once again. They had a little bit of separation after that restart, but they're all starting to kind of click back in together. And you did mention the 09 of Hickenbottom, who is in this top 5. Costarellos got by Kevin Steele for 6. So Kevin Steele will lose one more point along the way, as the 25 is going to try to get back up through this field where he started in row number 1 on the outside. But meanwhile, it is kind of a breakaway now as Caldwell continues to lead. It's still single file throughout the rest of this field. And now, at least with some more separation, you think there might be some less yellows along the way, because when you have everybody separated like this, there's not many drivers fighting for position, unless you see right here with some damaged cars. Now, Joseph Lester's getting by, but we could see this separation happen, and what that means is a possible long run, and that could be to the benefit of the 63, where we saw that a little bit earlier in this race.
It definitely could be. But going back to Kevin Steele, I just want to mention, remember, he was one of the drivers involved in that very early caution we had, the first caution, where he got loose, he got involved in that. A little bit of damage acquired, nothing race ending. But this is what Kevin's good at. This is why I call him Kevin Consistency Steele, because a lot of drivers, when they get involved in an incident like that, it's easy to get in your own head and keep making mistakes and just kind of lose your rhythm. But Kevin, something happens to him, he makes a bobble or something, another car gets into him, and he just gets right back in that rhythm. He gets back in that groove, and he's always salvages, it seems like. And right now, he's in P7, so he's within the top 10, even after that early incident. And he's got the whole race out of him to work on that car and make up more positions. So Kevin Consistency Steele running P7 as in front of them. The race for the lead is kind of heating up. It looks like Bryson Hixenbaugh is actually starting to look around the track. He was way up high on the straightaway, and he kind of dove down low into the corner. I think he's just looking for any opening he can find to try and make his way around that 12.
And you see on the exit of turn 4, if you just saw that from the rear view camera of that 12 machine, he is relatively low on the exit of turn number 4, easily anticipating that the 63 maybe could gain momentum and try and move to the inside. That's what he does not want to happen. You see him just a little bit lower on the track on the entrance of the back straightaway. But that's what he's trying to do to prevent that 63 from finding that opening. If you can't really make a move in the corner, you have to make that move down the straightaways, and there's not much room to make a move in the corner unless you're already down to the inside. And you see the 63 just trying to scour each and every lane, trying to pull a crossover, maybe fake the 12 into something else so that he can make that opening, find a vulnerable spot, and that way the 63 could try to take over the race lead. Still all single file through at least to the bottom of the top 10, where they're fighting for position, at least in that ground between Cameron Stone and Dalton Mobley.
And at a track that is so one line, where there's just one really strong line and a bunch of other mediocre lines, driving defensively is the key. And Cameron Caldwell is showing us that he absolutely can drive defensively. He's predicting where Hixenbaugh is trying to go. He's moving up in front of him, not only blocking his runs, but also disturbing the air in front of him, making it so that Bryson Hixenbaugh's car handles just that much worse. And that is the way you have to drive these tracks. And he's doing a phenomenal job of it. Behind Bryson Hixenbaugh, the 7 car is slowly losing ground, but he's still firmly within drafting distance and definitely keeping himself within distance of strike should either of those front runners make a bobble. Behind him, Rich Petrucco is still kind of in the fray. He's tagging along with the number 7, the 25 car as well. That is Jimmy Costarellos. And now the opening has presented itself. The 63 is to the bottom, but he's not quite going to get clear, at least by the middle of the corner. The 12 car is going to stay strong on the high side, but unfortunately has to file in behind him, coming through the quad oval. And all of that allowed the 7 car to close the gap a little bit more along with Rich Petrucco. So this 5 car train tightened up a lot, and the battle is getting pretty intense.
And they're starting to creep their way back up. Costarellos will join the group as well. So now that makes it 5 cars. And Cameron Caldwell now falls to second. You saw that move from the 63 of Hixenbaugh, was waiting to the back straightaway to get that momentum. He found that opening to the bottom, made the move in 3 and 4, and now he's back to the front where he started this race on the pole or at the top position. And Cameron Caldwell is now going to have to try and find some way to get around that 63 in the meantime. As we're approaching lap number 46, you see a little bit of tightness behind this group, where when grassy is, you see Rich Petrucco and Costarellos are fairly close together. They are within drafting distance, all 3 of them. They're kind of in a scrunch together, and they could be a result of some of the positions here, at least through this later run. But how awkward would it be for 7th and 8th? If you look back there, Kevin Steele is in 7th, Preston McRae is in 8th. Now, if you notice the race cars, both red and blue, Kevin Steele's repping Coca-Cola on his race car. Preston McRae has Pepsi on his race car. So maybe a little bit of battle for soda supremacy on the racetrack, and maybe as opposed to position.
Soda Wars is not a new thing to this league for sure, Ken. I think it was Talladega a while back where pretty much everybody was running a soda scheme, and Hixenbaugh was running the Soda Cookies Oreo car, and these guys love their soda, and definitely a fight for soda supremacy out on the track as Preston McRae is trying to tail down Kevin Steele. As we rode on board right there, was a great camera shot, but man, oh man, look at that. Right behind the number 7, Rich Petrucco just kind of slotted his way up in the line, but now the 25, Jimmy Costarellos, is down to the bottom. He's actually going to pick up a spot. So the stagnation in the running order here is pretty much ended, as it looks like maybe Patrico has a little bit of front end damage. I'm not sure where he acquired that. Could have been just a little bit of too much bump drafting gone wrong, or I'm not really sure why you bump drafted a track like this, but definitely some damage there. Not sure how he got it.
Not sure really how he got it, because maybe he could have been on the bystander situation on some of the incidents. Maybe he had just a little bit of attack from somebody, and in turn that could have been some of the damage. Or maybe he could have even tagged the wall. We maybe didn't even see it. And that could be also maybe a product of the damage there on that 27 machine. Luckily, though, he's not losing too much time, although it's very aero dependent, this track at Texas Motor Speedway. And if you look a little bit further up front, there's Randy Drumhiller making a move, or trying to make a move on Chad Edwards. This is 412, still for position. And a little bit further back, Morrison, who got through that wreck in the opening stage of this race. He's now trying to get under Kyle Ammon in the number 61. That is also for position. There are currently 22 cars on the lead lap, but just as I say that, now there's 21, as Eric Wineland just got lapped by the rest of the field. He is down on power, like you mentioned, Andre, and now he's just going to have to muster what he can with a very, very wounded race car, as everybody in a huge group all together once again. Cameron Caldwell a little bit further behind.
I'll tell you what, Bryson Hixenbaugh has built a massive lead. You can see it's about 1.2 seconds right now. Behind him, you got a huge cluster of cars fighting for second. You still got Cameron Caldwell holding strong in P2, but Wayne Grassy, Jimmy Costarellos, Rich Patrico, they're not making it easy on him. They're right there, just waiting to pounce. Maris Hickenbottom also kind of lurking back there in the distance. He's not too far out. Give this run a few more laps, see how these cars wear and handling sort of shakes out. Maybe he's going to get up in that pack as well. Now the 25, Jimmy Costarello, is going to get to the quarter panel of the 7 and dive into 3 and 4, and he is going to complete that pass and easily clear him. Now up into P3, chasing down that 12 car. That is Cameron Caldwell.
Cameron Caldwell also built up a gap of his own as Costarellos moves to 3rd. So he's kind of been making his way and carving his way through the field. Remember, he fell a little bit through in that opening run where he started on 2nd, and then he kind of got freight trained by a good group of the cars behind. He fell back through the latter portion of this top 10, but eagerly through this run, he's picked himself back up. He's picked all the pieces back up, and now he's back to the podium spot, trying to get back to 2nd and possibly even try to catch the race leader down in Hixenbaugh. Remember, Hixenbaugh was the previous race winner, so he knows a thing or two about winning, of course, with 13 wins to his resume, but also a win here at Texas in March earlier in this season. So he knows what it takes to win at this track. He knows how the setup will feel. He knows at least a good consideration about what this track will be like for him. So he's coming off that win. It's certainly momentum-based, and now he's already picking up through the rest of this field, trying to gap the rest of the guys behind. Here is still the battle, though, for the drivers behind. That's Kyle Hammond. There's a 16 of Samuelson who's letting all these drivers by. He's a lap down. Chad Edwards, just a big group here fighting for top 15.
Chad Edwards, actually a driver for a new team that formed last week. He is now driving for Loudmouth Motorsports for the remainder of the season in that 34 machine, trying to do the booth proud. So he's out there doing everything he can, fighting for it. But the guys around him, not making it easy. They are running some great lines and definitely applying the pressure as they continue to duke it out back there. And really seems like pretty much, now that those guys have got it figured out, we've got a lot of single file racing around the track, and I think this is what a lot of these playoff drivers want to see. After the chaos that was Kansas, I think a little bit of normalcy, a little bit of consistency is definitely welcome. As I say that, the 25 gets really loose off of turn 2. He actually slapped the outer retaining wall with his right rear quarter panel. It slid out so much, but that allowed the 7 to close in quite a bit. Now the 7 looking to the bottom through the quad will not quite, oh, he is going to get there. He is at the quarter panel, and then the door closes. We're now on board as this battle develops. The 25 about a lane higher as he diamonds out of the corner. The 7 car just running a consistently lower line through the turn. Whoa! Then he gets way loose out of the corner there, Ken.
Yeah, he got very loose. You mentioned the 25, and Costarellos had a meeting with the outside wall. So did Rain Grassy on the exit of turn 2. He lost a little bit of time trying to catch up to that 25. He does not lose position, though. Patrico will stay behind. But I want to refer back to what you said, Andre, about that team that you formed, the Loudmouth Motorsports with Chad Edwards as the driver. I got to ask, is it a little more stressful on the racetrack now that you have one of your drivers out there, or now that you're not just a commentator in the booth, but you're a team owner as well, looking over your driver who's battling right now for 14th?
I don't know if it's more stressful, but it is a little bit more fun when you have a horse in the race and you got somebody that you're pulling for and you're trying to make sure it gets good results. It definitely makes it a little bit more entertaining. But of course, as a commentator, you got to remain impartial. It's kind of like a Dale Jarrett situation there with Ned Jarrett commentating almost. But yeah, it's definitely fun. I have been in talks about opening up a team for a while, mainly because there were so many drivers that were being brought up by Highside and Cameron Stone as development drivers now in the Truck Series, and there just weren't enough seats. So we needed some new teams to open up. And I had talked to the admins of the league. I was like, "Hey, do I got to be a Cup driver to actually start a team?" And they said, "No, not as the rules are right now." So I said, "All right, let's get that team started up." Zach Probst, a playoff driver, going one lap down. So a bit of an interesting development there. I'm not sure if he's down on power due to some damage. He was involved in one of those incidents earlier on, as you remember, Ken. Looks like he does have quite a bit of right front damage. And that right front, that is about the worst place you could damage your car on this track because really the right front tire is the tire that drives your car out of the corner. And in turn two, where you need as much drive out as you could possibly get, if you got a little bit of damage, that car is going to be slow as snail coming out of that corner. So he's just limping his car around the track, trying to salvage whatever points he can. He's doing a good job making sure that that car is going in the right direction and that he's not really obstructing the undamaged cars as they navigate around him. But just an unfortunate situation for Probst right now.
He's 21st, currently the only playoff driver one lap down, and he will lose points for sure. He came into this race the last driver in this round of 8. He came in 8th all the way at the tail end of that playoff grid. He will, though, gain points on the likes of Jonathan Delaney, who did not show up tonight, but compared to all the other drivers that he's battling with, remember, he's going with Christopher Haman, who's currently sitting ahead of him in 19th. Maybe just 2 spots, but that is still points on the line. And then you have the other drivers, which he desperately wants to have a bad day now that he's having a rough day. Hickenbottom and Kevin Steele, who are all within points of another. They are currently sitting, Kevin Steele currently sitting 8th. Hickenbottom is sitting 6th in the top 10. So that's certainly not helping his case, trying to move on to Martinsville and try to almost be in a must-win situation with the amount of points he could lose at the end of tonight. But hopefully he's able to find something out of there. As the 7 man, he has been struggling with that race car, especially at the exit of turn number 2. He has been very, very tight. You did mention this, Andre, where the drivers over the course of the run are going to be struggling with a tight race car, especially off turn number 2. But Wayne Grassi has been particularly shining in terms of that struggle. He has been almost tapping the outside wall numerous times, and he's lost time in the process.
He's lost time, but I gotta say, I'm amazed that he has not lost that car yet. It's gotten so sideways that, I think a lesser driver would have wrecked that car 3 times already. But his talent's really shining through here. They always say, loose is fast. And so a lot of these guys are trying to get their car as loose as possible, especially at Texas. And while sometimes that can come back and bite you go a little bit too far, I don't think it's game over for Wayne Grassi. His car's a little bit too loose as it stands. He is losing a little bit of time. But there's a lot of pit adjustments, be it tire pressures, be it your track bar, or even your brake bias, which you can adjust in car. I don't even think you have to come down pit road for that. That can change how tight or loose your car feels. So he can still make some adjustments to that car and get it figured out a little bit more. And, we're talking about how his car just isn't handling the way he wants it to, and yet still he's in P4. He's running really well right now, given his current circumstance. He is under pressure from Rich Petrucco, and all of this going on. Hickenbottom has extended the lead to nearly 4 seconds as we approach lap 66 of this stage. So a lot of battling behind Hickenbottom, but a familiar sight with that 63 sailing off into the sunset in stage 1.
And so many times that we've seen this from Hickenbottom, where he's able to build up that lead and he's really able to keep it, maintain it all the way through. And he's been just so consistent every single time he steps foot on the racetrack, or at least he gets onto the racetrack with his race car, and it's insane how he's been able. You see how loose his car is, though, on the exit of turn number 2. You have to lift off of that corner a lot more than maybe you think. It looks deceivingly fast, but it's also a little bit slower. Turn 3 and 4 is faster. You have to keep that, as he's very loose and he's pitting now on the racetrack. So our pit strategy is starting to kick in. Green flag pit stops underway, and I believe it would have started with some drivers further behind, but it's actually starting with the race leader.
This is definitely interesting to see, because if you recall, Ken, a lot of these previous races in the playoffs, it seems like Hickenbottom has always leaned towards the long-run strategy. He's always tried to stretch his tires and his fuel as far as he could take them. But now, it must be opposite day because he's the first one down pit road. He gets a clean stall entry, as you can see. And with him coming down pit road is going to be Cameron Caldwell inheriting the lead. Joseph Lester came across the radio. He's going to be bringing it down pit road. Here comes Cameron Caldwell. He's going to give up the lead to Wayne Grassy, who's staying out on the track. Cosarello's actually inheriting the lead as Cameron Caldwell comes down the pits road here. But this could just be another way for Hixenbaugh to extend his lead. That 1 lap earlier that he came down from Cameron Caldwell is about 1 second, is what 1 second, 1.5 seconds is what that's going to translate to once this all cycles out with how the tire wear affects the lap time. So pretty much clean pit stops for everybody so far. And right now, we're looking at Cameron Stone and the 27 Rich Petrucco side by side as the rest of the field continues this pit sequence.
You see the battle that is for third. Cameron Stone was stealthily making his way up through the top 10 even before these drivers went down pit road. He recently got by to the 7th position when he got by Kevin Steele. So he's been carving his way through the field as well in these longer runs. He's been very prominent there. He had a little bit of damage from that incident earlier in this race, but he was able to patch it all up on the trip down pit road. He's got a clean race car, and now all he's got to focus on is just his race only and not have to worry about any damage or anything else to distract him from trying to win this race and continue, or at least punch his ticket into the championship 4 when we go to Phoenix in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm very surprised that I did not see the drivers further back in this field go down pit road first, as now you see the 99 is making his trip down pit road. That's Ryan McDaniel. He signaled he was pitting in. Patrick Mush also said a little bit over the text chat that he was pitting in. Zach Probst is now also there as well, as you see, with a damaged race car going to try to pick it up. And Kevin Steele is also making his way down pit road. So we're seeing a little bit of a scatter between some drivers electing to pit now and some drivers electing to stay out for the moment.
One of the drivers on the long run strategy is definitely Cameron Stone. He is hoping for a caution to come out right now. He's in P3. This is pretty much the highest up the grid he's been since the incident. You can see as we ride on board, he's still got that damage on the right front, and that is going to be slowing him down continually. So what he's hoping is that he can just get a caution, get that track position, maybe get some of the damage fixed when he comes down pit road and try and recover. And remember, a lot of these drivers that have damaged cars, Zach Probst, Cameron Stone, Rich Petrucco, who had a little bit of front-end damage. We're so early in the race, and we have so many pit stops ahead of us. Every time they bring it down the pits, they're going to be able to get a little bit more of this damage fixed. So definitely the dynamics are going to change as these cars continue to improve for these drivers. Jimmy Cosarellos, your current race leader, is going to peel off the track. He's coming down pit road. Previously to him, Chad Edwards had come down pit road. I believe Brandon Pierce had also pit. Petrucco coming down pit road behind him. So these guys, they got a magnet in their cars, I think. They've been together all night long, bumper to bumper, and now entering the pits together. As a pass for the lead is underway. No! Cameron Stone is going to let off the throttle. He thinks better of that attempt. Now looking to the high side, as Wayne Grassy appears to be slowing up for pit road entry. It's a smooth pit road entry there, and Cameron Stone now inherited the lead, but I think that's going to be short-lived if he can't get a caution, because he stayed out so long now. He is just continuing to sacrifice lap times here, Ken. I mean, his car is going to be going 1.5, 2 seconds slower per lap than these guys who've already pitted.
You got to think, especially at a track like this where tire wear is so key. We did talk about this at Kansas. We've talked about it so many times over our stint covering the Galaxy Cup Series, just how much the difference is between drivers on old tires and drivers on new tires at tracks like these 1.5 milers, where you can be on old tires just setting slower laps, but the drivers on the fresh tires, they just zoom right by you, and they could easily take over position and easily get by you in a whim. So it is a big difference between the older tires, staying out on those older tires and having those tires wear out, as opposed to getting the fresh rubber along the way and then trotting there as you're on board with former race leader Bryson Hixenbaugh, who's now picked this up to 9th. He is now back on the lead lap. He did get around Jimmy Cosarellos when Cosarellos did go down pit road. Current driver right behind him, fellow playoff driver, the 17 of Christopher Amon, who I believe has yet to pit as well. So he's gone by him. Hixenbaugh's going to try to go back up to the front. And you see the difference there. 2 seconds between Jason Taylor, a 30.6, and Hixenbaugh, a 28.9. Just unbelievable how much time is gained when you get those fresh tires down pit road, especially at a track like this. And now with some drivers who have still yet to pit, Hixenbaugh's not going to try his best to carve through the field, trying to take over the race lead where he once was.
But remember, as much as we talk up the short run strategy and talk about the benefits, it is a bit of a double-edged sword, because if this run continues on to the end of the stage, Hixenbaugh is going to be on the oldest set of tires in the race. Once we reach this end of the stage, there's going to be drivers behind him on 5, 6 lap fresher tires. They're going to be a little bit faster. So while the short pit strategy can help you out in the short run, as the race goes on, as it stays green, it kind of tends to balance itself out. So, definitely not a sure thing that Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to inherit this lead and pull away to the end of stage one. It definitely could balance out. And beyond that, you never know when you're going to get a yellow flag. The strategy is going to get a wrench thrown in it. And we're just going to have to see. But Cameron Stone continuing to lead the race. He has yet to pit. I'm honestly surprised he's been able to go this far on those tires. I mean, you got to think that right front's got to be getting down into 15, 12% territory. And at that point, those things are hard to wheel around the track. He's managing it for now, but for how much longer?
The question is, how long can he really stay out until something happens? Maybe his car just doesn't respond anymore, or maybe he could even blow a tire, which we've yet to really see in this series, but it's still possible in the realms of iRacing, of course, when the tires start to go down all the way to zero. Still got a couple of drivers that have yet to pit. You saw just a little bit ago, Christopher Hamann in the 17 car, he did go down pit road, so he will now complete his cycle. He'll make his way and cycle back. He's now lapped down in 20th as he just exited out. Mobley is also down pit road as well. Brandon Pierce has yet to pit. Kyle Ammon has yet to pit. So those 3 drivers at the top of the field are yet to go down pit road. And this is really the first time we're seeing this, where we're seeing these drivers stay out longer. You would expect the leaders at the start of the pit cycle to stay out longer than the rest of this field, but turns out it's the complete opposite, with now a driver further back in the field staying out all by himself as everyone else cycles around him.
You got to wonder if Cameron Stone was just planning on another caution. We've had incidents continually throughout this race on a pretty consistent basis. This is the first time all night we've had a run go quite this far, so maybe catching Cameron Stone by surprise. He kind of committed to this long run strategy, didn't really expect it to stay green, and now, unfortunately for him, it has. If you look at the ticker there on the left-hand side, Bryson Hixenbaugh, who has pitted, is only 19 seconds back. So at the point that Cameron Stone comes down pit road, he's going to go easily a lap down before he even gets out of his pit stall. So it's definitely going to be nothing short of disastrous if he does not get a yellow flag. That is pretty much what this entire strategy that he has pulled is hinging on. So he's just going to continue to stay out as long as he can, and behind him is 61, Amon. He's 15 seconds back from Cameron Stone. Brandon Pierce in that 38 machine, and then, of course, Bryson Hixenbaugh in 4th, slicing and dicing his way up through the field. Jason Taylor in 5th, and Cameron Caldwell, the next playoff driver, back there in 6th. He's 24 seconds back from Cameron Stone. So that's pretty much the battle between the top-running playoff drivers, with a lot of non-playoff drivers in between them, drivers who have pitted, drivers who haven't pitted. And Kevin Steele right now, 1 lap down, he's in P10, but he has pitted. So he's kind of just lingered all night long, right around P10, P9, P8. And that just seems to be where his car is running. So maybe making some adjustments to that car as the run goes on.
And keep in mind that this could be something that Stone is planning in terms of the rest of the field comparative to him. He's got a 16-second gap to second place, a number 61 machine of Kyle Ammon, and about 16.8 seconds to Brandon Pierce, who I believe has just signaled to go down pit road. So he's going to make his stretch down pit road and kind of complete his cycle as well. But if Cameron Stone elapses a good chunk of this field, if he gets through a good chunk of these drivers here, now that everyone's cycled through, now that the drivers on fresh rubber aren't really on fresh rubber really anymore because they've already put some laps down on their tires, and really the only drivers to have fresh rubber is the drivers that are way behind the race leader, Cameron Stone. But he could be looking at this as an opportunity to find a yellow flag. If a yellow flag were to come out, practically all those drivers from 7th on back, or at least 8th on back, will be 1 lap down. So he will have an advantage over a lot of these drivers, including playoff drivers alike, and with Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickenbottom in that group, and so many other drivers that are put a lap down. Christopher Hamann there as well. Of course, Zach Probst, who's had issues tonight, and so on and so forth as Pierce gets out of pit road and he completes his cycle as well. So that could be in the works for Cameron Stone, hoping for a yellow flag where everyone can get lapped, he can get his fresh set of rubber, and he'll be on the best situation comparative to the rest of the field.
Definitely could play out that way if all the cards fell in his favor, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Bryson Hixenbaugh has made his way up into P2. The next car is the leader, so he's just got to be focused on hitting his marks, trying to get the cleanest laps he can. and continue to run down the leader. But you'll notice he's not running him down as fast as he was. The gap has taken a good 2 to 3 laps to go from 17 seconds, 18 seconds or so, down to 16.9. So definitely it seems like the tire wear is actually starting to balance out a little bit more than we would have thought, especially with how recently he pitted. You see the gap now 16.8, so really only gained about 0.3 on the leader that time around. Now, granted, he did have a little bit of traffic right at the beginning of that lap, but interesting development that really he's not closing in quite as much as you'd expect. Riding on board with Cameron Stone, and you can see some of these cars that did pit and got fresher tires, they're just going to go around him on the bottom. He's not going to bother to hold them up. He's going to say, all right, go around me, no big deal. I'm just turning laps. Eventually, Cameron Stone's going to have to pit, and I think the time for getting a caution is quickly starting to run out here.
And eventually, in about, I'd say 27, about 26 laps, as Cameron Stone will come across to the start-finish line, we will be at the conclusion of stage number 1. So not only is this pit strategy just happening to lengthen itself, as you look at the gap between Cameron Stone and his fellow teammate, Bryson Nixonbaugh, maintaining at about 16.7 seconds last time around. It is now a situation for Stone to try and stay out and get stage points, get a stage win, try to get some points along his way to at least attempt to lock himself into the championship 4. Bryson Nixonbaugh did come into this race with such a big points gap to the rest of the guys behind that he could easily just lock himself into the championship 4 in the title fight at Phoenix in 2 weeks' time, and he wouldn't have to worry about Martinsville. He'll just race here on points tonight and try to get the best finish he could to get all those points to clinch himself. Cameron Stone must also be looking at that situation to join his teammate and be 2 high-side cars that will occupy the championship 4, and that'll be half of the championship 4 between the teammates working together, or at least trying to work against each other going to Phoenix if they're able to lock themselves in. So that's also in the conversation as well. Points, points, points. Going to be looking at that all night long. We talked about it with Zach Probst. We're going to be talking about it with some of the other drivers like Kevin Steele, Hickenbottom, and the rest of them as well. And obviously the 2 drivers who have been so dominant this season.
And last time around, look at those lap times. Only a 1/10 of a second faster for Bryson Nixonbaugh. And the lap before that, Cameron Stone actually ran a faster lap. So I am really surprised at how much this tire wear has leveled out as we now ride on board once again with the gyro cam on Cam Stone's car. My question is, I really don't think he can make it. Like, I have zero faith that he can make it to the end of the stage on fuel. But is he going to try to make it? No, he has come across the radio just now and said he is pitting in. So this long run strategy, he was committed to it. He definitely stuck to it, and he tried. But unfortunately, it's just not going to work out. He's going to make the hard left turn off pit road, get the car woed up to about 5,600 revs, and he's going to make his way down to his pit stall with 46 car in tow. He's going to be pitting behind him. And with him coming down the pit road, that's going to give the lead back to Bryson Nixonbaugh, and that's going to put Cam Caldwell up into P2, roughly 8 seconds behind Bryson Nixonbaugh. So an even bigger lead about to occur for Bryson Nixonbaugh.
So Nixonbaugh will retain the race lead this time by. He'll get by Cameron Stone as he finally made his decision to go down pit road. I believe just could not go any longer under his stint, especially staying out, trying to save fuel along the way, also keeping that in mind. So the 57 is now out onto the racetrack. He just exited pit road, so he won't lose as many spots for this as maybe it could have been. It could have been a lot worse for that 57. So at least his strategy won't be too badly off, and he'll at least be within this top 5 and maybe have a gap to the drivers even further behind. He'll even fall maybe to 2nd or 3rd, or maybe back to 5th at worst in this situation. Also got an update that Ryan Samuelson and Zach Probst have reached the garage. So in Zach Probst's case, it's going to be a must-win situation at Martinsville next week, which I believe a lot of these drivers just do not want to be in. If I was a driver, I would not want to have a must-win situation on me, especially going to a track like Martinsville, where so many things can happen and short track racing can get all the more intense, like we saw at Bristol just a couple of weeks back when we covered that race.
Yeah, talk about unpredictable. Martinsville, it's a completely flat, really short track, a lot of bump and runs, a lot of chrome horns, and it's definitely, like you said, not a track that you want to have to rely on getting a win, because even if you're the fastest driver at Martinsville, you're not only dealing with the competition behind you, but you're almost always in lap traffic. If something happens on the track that's so narrow, there's really nowhere to go to escape it. It really is one of the biggest wild cards, I would say, outside of the plate tracks like Talladega, Daytona, and maybe Darlington, I would call a wild card, but Martinsville, an absolute question mark when you show up. You never know what's going to happen. So Cameron Stone has made his way back out on the track, and he is running down the number 9 car, Joseph Lester. Uh, that is going to be for P10. So if he can get around the 9, that long run strategy still kept him within the top 10, which uh, honestly played out a lot better for him than I was expecting earlier on. I was saying that this was going to be a disastrous strategy if he didn't end up getting a caution, but really seems like he's starting to salvage it. I mean, he's up in the P9, working his way through the field. The next playoff drive in front of him is only 2 cars away, up in 7th. That's Kevin Consistency Steele, and he's got Damaris Hickenbottom right in front of him. So if Stone were to be able to catch up to these guys before the end of the stage, which time is running out, we're getting absurdly close to the end of the stage, that could be a few more points. And obviously, every car he passes here in this top 10 is going to be, whoa, he's going to slot up right in front of the 53. He's got those fresh tires, and he is on the move for sure. He's just kind of putting the moves on these guys, doing everything that his car is capable of doing if he continues to charge through the field. Up in the P8 now, only 4 seconds behind Kevin Steele.
And now the question arises, especially for Cameron Stone. He's on the freshest tires of the field. Now we're approaching about 5 laps ago, 6 laps ago, until lap number 105, where we'll conclude stage 1. Remember, cautions do come out on these stages, so we'll have the field re-racked. We'll have that opportunity for drivers to go down pit road. Does Cameron Stone elect to stay out here to try to make a bold decision, especially since how long he stayed out in the first stage? Or do you think he'll probably just go down pit road with the rest of these guys, be on equal footing, and try to maintain himself from there on out, even though he's been very quick through these longer runs?
If he didn't have any damage, I'd say there is a slight possibility he tries and stay out and tries to get that track position, but due to the fact that he still has a little bit of damage on that right front and the passenger side door, I think the best call, regardless of how fresh his tires are or anything like that, would be to come down pit road, get some more of that damage fixed up, and just try to get this car as on pace as he can get it, because I don't think that car is super far off pace as it is. I mean, we can see that even on older tires, he's really holding his own, and now that he's got fresh tires, he's carved his way up through the field. 2 laps ago, I said he was 4 seconds behind Kevin Steele. Now, he's 2 seconds back and closing. So the 57 is definitely still in shape to get a good finish. I'm not sure if it's a winning car with damage, but I think with the pace that he has, he could safely come down pit road on this stage caution, get some more damage fixed up, get 4 fresh tires, and just try to slowly carve his way through the field. And it's not impossible. We saw earlier in the race, Wayne Grassy got shuffled back in the field, as did Jimmy Cosarellos. Both of those guys, before too long, found their way back towards the front. So possibly we could see something similar from Cameron Stone later on.
And if you look on the ticker, just 5 playoff drivers within this top 10. Of course, you have Ixamon Caldwell filing out of first and second, but then you see that trio of playoff drivers with Stone that we were talking about, Damaris Hickenbottom and Kevin Steele, as now the 57 gets by Kevin Steele for P7. So still going to gain points on this stage. He's still definitely going to have something not to complain about on this stage ending, as we're just about 3 laps shy of it at lap number 105. So he'll still gain points along the way. It won't be a total loss, even with this strategy, even though it's been a lot of laps that he stayed out on the racetrack and he lost some time along the way. He's still going to gain points by the conclusion of the stage, and he will gain points. He will have a little bit of cushion to the driver behind him, which was Cameron Caldwell sitting in second. He will lose a little bit of points to Caldwell, but he won't lose as much, so it won't be too drastic for that 57, as he's got the freshest tires and is now trying to carve his way through the field. Christopher Alon is now about to be 3 laps down on the racetrack, as he just got passed by the 63 Pixel. Actually, excuse me, 2 laps down on the racetrack by the 63. So that's the second playoff driver we've seen and not have a great night here at Texas Motor Speedway. And Christopher Mon, how strong he's been through the playoffs, and right now it's also looking pretty grim for that 17 machine.
Christopher Hammond is a driver we've seen limp wounded cars to great finishes before. If you remember back to Richmond, he had quite a bit of damage and he still managed to bring it home, I believe, in the top 10. But unfortunately tonight it seems like the damage is just getting the better of him, and it's just not quite on pace. But we are on the final lap of the stage. Bryson Mixenbaugh with a 7.8 second lead over second place. No pressure from behind. He's pretty much clear to coast to the line from here, and he will cross the line. Bryson Mixenbaugh wins stage 1.
The winner in stage 1 is Bryson Ixenbaugh, and the rest of the field will file through to the top 10. And the yellow flag will be waved very shortly by the officials, signaling the end of the stage as Ixenbaugh is kind of maintaining himself at the end of this lap, trying to watch out for that yellow, trying to keep his speed up, and everyone's getting by at the moment. Joseph Lester is now just crossing the start-finish line, and now that he's crossing, there's the yellow flag. So stage 1 is now officially ended. Bryson Ixenbaugh is your stage winner, and I believe with that is further putting himself in a place to clinch his spot into the championship 4 at Come Phoenix in 2 weeks. So Ixenbaugh will slow his car down, the catch pace car right on the back straightaway, and a caution out for the stage. But Andre, within that long run, it was drastically different from what we saw in that first initial run. We saw about 3 yellows to start off this race, and them all very condensed within each other. You had a yellow, then you had a little bit of a run, then you had another yellow, then you had a short run, then another yellow. Now it's spanned out to a very long run. Are we expecting runs kind of like these long runs a little bit later in this race, or maybe as you see with the tires getting back on these race car drivers are fresh rubber, you'll see a lot more pack racing and could be a product of more yellows going down the road?
Well, every time I make a prediction, it tends to be wrong. Carlos doesn't call me Andre slightly off my calculations, Grandbush, for no reason. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think the long green flag run we got was kind of a result of these guys just figuring out the car, getting used to how it feels as the tires wear and as the run progresses. Because early on in this race, it really is kind of an unknown. You're not quite sure how different your car is going to be as the laps wind down, and you make minor mistakes. And at this level of racing, minor mistakes can be deadly. So maybe we're going to get another long green flag run in stage 2. Definitely in stage 3, we're going to see the heat rise just like we always do. That's when it's game time as the laps wind down and everything starts to come to a head. But pretty much a clean stop for everybody. I didn't see anybody really slide through their stall. I'm not aware of any speeding penalties thus far. So right now, we're going to try and have a word with Bryson Ixenbaugh. Ken's got him.
And Bryson, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us, first of all?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, Bryson. Well, it's been another dominating stage 1 for you and your 63 team, along with the 57 Cameron Stone, who we talked about him and his journey through this first stage. You had a couple of yellows to occupy this first about 25 or so lap stint, and then you had a little bit of a fight with Cameron Caldwell. Then you were able to get away from him. How much has that car really changed over the course of that long run, as opposed to when all those yellows were coming out and you really had to occupy in the short run when you had those restarts?
It's got a really big handling change in it today. It's, for some reason, the track state in this session it's really loose off 2, and everybody's just holding on for dear life. But it's rough out there, and you just got to hang on to it and try not to burn off the right rear.
Yeah, and the track especially has been one of the biggest topics of conversation on this broadcast, especially the tire wear and how much of an effect 1 and 2 has on the race car as opposed to turns 3 and 4. Is there any sort of struggle that you are having in 1 and 2, or anything that you're finding to be a little different in 1 and 2 that seems to be something you want to work on this next stage?
It's just kind of drifting up off on exit. Most other sessions I've been able to get to kind of stick after I hit the apex, and this session is kind of drifting up a little bit, going towards the wall a little bit too much, and sliding the tires. And it seems like everybody else is having that problem, so it's not hurting me too bad, but it's not great for handling.
All right, Bryson, well, stage 1 win in the books for you, and a possible chance to save your spot for the Championship 4 in Phoenix in a couple weeks. So we wish you the best of luck, and we hope to see you out on track, continuing to put on the show.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully stage 2 goes better today than last week.
Bryson Ixenbaugh out of the booth. We'll bring you back into the team chat. He is your stage 1 winner for tonight here at Texas Motor Speedway. Going to try to sweep the stages tonight if he's able to hold on through this next stage all the way through. So our next stage is still 105 laps. We'll go all the way to lap 210, Andre. So it's still about the same distance. So we'll still have a green flag pit stop or pit stop to go along the way if there's a yellow flag in that circumstance. So we'll still have drivers go down pit road. Which driver do you think will be one of the most interesting, at least on this pit strategy, to watch for? Do you think Cameron Stone might be one of those drivers again to pull off his strategy? Do you think someone else might come out of the fray?
I think the big change-up is going to be with Bryson Ixenbaugh. He pulled that short-run strategy, and it did work out for him. But again, we've seen so many times in weeks prior that Hixenbaugh tends to lean towards the long run strategies. And I think we're going to see him go back to that as the race progresses and as he gets more confident that the race is going to shake out in a certain way. So that's just my prediction. We're going to see something on that restart that kind of went unnoticed, or not the restart, but during that pit sequence. Cameron Stone passed one car on pit road, which means that moves him up into row 3. So the furthest up the grid he's been since the incident, well, since the pit sequence when he was leading the race, I should say. But definitely one of the best restarting positions he's had thus far. So we're going to keep an eye on him. Kevin Steele, also right there next to him, actually one row behind him, trying to recover from that incident early on. He's done a great job coming back, making his presence known. And right now, the pace car getting ready to pull off the track.
So it'll be the two playoff drivers in Bryson Ixenbaugh and Cameron Caldwell, which you have seen battle a couple of times throughout tonight's race. So we'll see if that continues to happen. Jimmy Cosarellos will be in row number 2 and 3rd. Wayne Grassi will be here in 4th in row number 2. Pace car will make its way down to pit road, and Ixenbaugh will make up another early start. And we are back underway from Texas as Cosarellos found his way to the inside of Cameron Caldwell, but Caldwell puts the block into turn number 1.
And it is a crazy battle for second. Cosarellos absolutely pushing Cameron Caldwell through the corner. Although Caldwell's going to get a good run out of the corner. Normally, you don't see the run come from exiting down so low, but somehow that 12 car made it work. Now the 7 car trying to get the better of Cosarellos. He's going to get to the quarter panel, give him a slight little side draft, and it's going to be enough. He's going to get clear of him and slide up into P3, but a battle for the lead now as the 12 car, like so many times before, is absolutely charging on this restart. He's going to get to the inside of the 63, up into P1 he goes. So Cameron Caldwell in a familiar position, leading the pack. Behind him, you got Cameron Stone now trying to get around Cosarellos, and I think this is what we're going to continue to see. That 25 machine is fierce on the long runs, and it's a force to be reckoned with. But on these restarts, before his car really starts to come in, he really struggles with it, and he does drop back through the field. So definitely he's hoping that this stays green, that he has a chance to really make the comeback like he did on the previous stage. And I definitely think he's going to be able to pull it off. That car is one of the only long run cars in the field alongside Bryson Ixenbaugh, and he's definitely got something for him as long as this stays green. Now Damaris Hickenbottom to the bottom of the 53. Or not the 53, I'm sorry, the 25. Damaris Hickenbottom back up inside the top 5 for the first time since about halfway through stage 1. So a good night for Team Highside. You got Bryson Hixenbaugh, Cameron Stone, Damaris Hickenbottom, 3, 4, and 5. But an even better night for Wayne Grassi, who has continued to pass cars and weave his way through the field, now right behind the leader, with an opportunity to possibly lead this thing.
And Wayne Grassi found his way to second for the first time tonight. He was able to get by Hixenbaugh. The only opportunity where Grassi was able to follow the 12 to second place was, of course, when Eric Weiland got tagged in turn 3, and that yellow came out just as he was about to get by. So now, under green flag conditions, the 7 has made his way around the 63. Now all he's got to do is just find the opening to the 12 of Cameron Caldwell. But once again, Caldwell is blocking down the back straightaway and eagerly taking the bottom to try and prevent that 7 from making that low line and trying to get a pass in on that 12. So you have to hang behind as Hixenbaugh will fall to 3rd. Cameron Stone and Damaris Hickenbottom, all 3 of them teammates, into 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So top 5 occupied with 4 playoff drivers, and Kevin Steele and change in 7th.
If Wayne Grassi can get around Cameron Caldwell and put himself in clean air for the first time all race long, that's a scary thing for the rest of the field. Because if that 7 is that fast, if he has that kind of pace in traffic, I can't imagine the kind of lap times he's going to turn once he gets himself into clean air. But to do it, he's going to have to get around that 12, and we saw in stage 1 just how well the 12 was pulling off the defensive maneuvers against the 63, now pulling those same maneuvers against the number 7 as he continues to lead the way. And possibly, we're going to see if maybe he made some adjustments on that pit stop to kind of aid his car in the long run, because we've seen time and time again, he gets these great jumps on these restarts, and he leads for the first 10 or so laps, but then once the tires start to fade, once the long run sets in, his car starts to fade as well. So we're going to see if he can actually hold the lead a little bit longer. He's definitely had a lot of pace all night long, but man, Wayne Grassi is right there, and he is charging. Behind him, you got Bryson Hixenbaugh and Cameron Stone, another 2 cars I really wouldn't want to tangle with on this track, and they're all right there. It's starting to be a 4-car breakaway as the 25 falls a little bit further back.
And Wayne Grafsey kind of has a similar setup to the 12. They both have very strong short run cars, and they're able to really get up to the field on the opening laps, but as soon as they start to kick in, Cameron Caldwell kind of falls back a little bit. He's still relatively quick on the long runs. He's able to manage that. Wayne Grassi, though, just falls a little bit to the top 10. Not something too bad. At least he could have been in a way worse position on the long runs, as he's very loose. Had to save that race car and wheel it back straight off turn number 2, so he's going to lose some time in the process. Maybe even a position if Bryson Ixabal and teammate Cameron Stone can try to find a way to get by, but very, very loose off the exit of turn 2, something we've been talking about all night long, and now Ixabal's found his way to the bottom.
Man, I got to give Wayne Grassley the honorary wheelman award. That guy has made some crazy impressive saves tonight. That car wants to break loose and fight him at every turn, and every time he has got that thing recovered, and he's making it look easy. I mean, that thing steps out, and it almost looks like he doesn't for a second actually worry about losing it, because he is just in complete control. And he only lost as a result of that one position. He dropped back to third. Bryson Hixenbaugh did get around him, but now the 7 is charging back up to Hixenbaugh, and he's gonna challenge him for it. So the car does seem to be fighting him, maybe not where he wants it, but regardless, he's doing a great job fighting through it.
And he's lost that spot to Hixenbaugh, so he falls back to third. Now he may have a charge from the 57 of Cameron Stone if he's able to get by, but luckily that 7 is still able to hold this position. And you did talk about Costarellos and the long run speed, Andre, and now I believe that car is starting to come alive once again, because he lost the spot all the way back to about 6, where he lost the spot to Hickenbottom. He's gotten by that 09 machine. Now he's creeping up to the back bumper of the 57 and possibly brewing up a battle between the drivers 3rd, 4th, and 5th, as Hixenbaugh is still on charge to catch that number 12 of Cameron Caldwell, and he's got a head of steam. So he is still catching up right to the back bumper, and the pressure is on now in the rearview mirror of the 12.
It's a mirror image of stage 1. Just like before, Bryson Hixenbaugh started to fall back a little ways, as did the 25 early on in the run. But then once we got a nice long green flag run, their cars came to life. So Hixenbaugh now to the bottom of Cameron Caldwell. They're going to sail it into turns 3 and 4. And unfortunately, I don't think Cameron Caldwell is quite going to be able to hold it on the top. He's going to slot in right behind the 63 now in Q2. So Hixenbaugh back to lead, as behind him, another car coming to life is that 25. You mentioned, Ken, that he is right on Cameron Stone, and he definitely is. He is there. We got a 5-car breakaway for the lead, and that 25 car, his lap times have been improving time after time. So now looking to the bottom, he's going to try to get to the quarter panel of Cameron Stone, and he does. If he can complete this pass through 3 and 4, that's going to put him up into P4, and he might get 2 for 1 as he now gets to the inside of Wayne Grassi, up into a podium position from 5th to 3rd in a single turn. That is Kenny Costarellos.
And he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. You can take that pun however you want, but still, Costarellos now into the podium spot. He's going to try to chase down the top 2. You're on board with that Chevrolet Camaro, and he has been awfully fast on these long runs. But you did say it, Andre, a little bit before, that it was a mirror image of stage 1. It is relatively tough to make those adjustments at the right moment, and Cameron Caldwell's probably thinking of that. He probably is thinking about making adjustments through the way, but it is really hard to make those adjustments because you're trying to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, because you're tuning these little parts of the car. You're trying to change little parts of the car to feel better, but sometimes maybe they don't work, or maybe they're just out of your comfort, and you're trying to handle that with your own mind state of what the car should feel and how you should be with that car and how comfortable you could be with that car. So I think Caldwell is just still trying to adjust to what Hixenbaugh has been able to do on the long runs, and where Cameron Caldwell has really faltered on the long runs. But still, Cameron Caldwell, at least through these playoffs, at least when we've seen him in these races, he's been known to have short run speed. He's been his best at when there's short run speed. If there was a lot more yellows, if they were connecting the dots with a lot more yellows through this race, the 12 would be necessarily faster than a lot of these guys, but unfortunately it's not playing out to his favor in terms of there's so many yellows on the track that he's not really able to gain any ground, really, as the 7 of Wayne Grassi now is in position to fight with Cameron Stone. This is for top 5 as they've broken away from Hickenbottom and company, as Petrucco also is trying to chase down the 09. Kevin still all by himself in 8th, and rounding out the top 10, Mobley and Drumhiller fighting for spots.
You know, when it comes to Cameron Caldwell, too, he could be playing the long game right here, because we mentioned earlier, The race has been fairly calm thus far, but in any motorsport ever, especially NASCAR, the end of the race is going to be a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more hectic than the beginning. So while the short run setup that 12 car has right now may not be too beneficial in holding the lead in the first few stages here, if we get to the end of the race and we get some late race cautions and the race ends on a green-white checkered, that short run speed could be the difference between winning and losing. So definitely that short run setup is not a surefire way to lose the race. That could come into handy later on as things get a little bit more intense. But behind him, man, look at that 25. He is still closing the gap. I've noticed him get a little bit loose coming out of the turn two the last few laps, but despite that, he's not really losing much time. He always gets that thing back under control. And give it a few laps, he's going to be battling with that 12 car for P2 and potentially catching up to that 63 because I've been looking at these lap times. Here's the comparison between Cameron Caldwell and Jimmy Costarellos. 30.0 for Cameron Caldwell and a 29.956. So 500ths of a second between them. It just goes to show how crazy the competition is in this league, folks. I mean, these guys are close. But yeah, that 25 car is turning lap times very comparable to the 63. The difference is the 63 is in clean air. He's got nobody in front of him disturbing the air, whereas the 25 does have a little bit of aero push. So it'll be interesting to see what could happen if he gets around the 12 car. This 3-car breakaway continuing to extend their gap to the next car behind, which is Cameron Stone. He did get around Wayne Grassy for P4, 1.5 seconds back from the leader now. I believe, being teammates, Cameron Stone and Bryson Nixonbaugh are going to have very similar setups, so possibly some long run speed out of that 57 is to be expected. But right now, the 3-car breakaway for the lead continues to pretty much remain stagnant.
And all the top 3 drivers are within a second on the racetrack. So that's the closest they've been. Cameron Stone is about 1.5 seconds behind his teammate Bryson Nixonbaugh, who's still leading this race. Cameron Caldwell, though, has not fallen as far as I maybe anticipated that he would in these long runs. He's actually just kept his spot in second, and he's been able to maintain his distance between Bryson Nixonbaugh. And speaking of distance in this race, this is the last 500-mile race of the year. So we won't see races this long anymore going into Martinsville next week, and then of course going to Phoenix where we'll crown a champion. So this is the last time drivers who are better at longer races like this, drivers who are able to adjust better on the longer races like this, are able to shine through. And I believe that's something that we've seen throughout these playoffs, Andre, where each and every track and each and every race gives a different kind of opportunity for certain drivers to maybe be better. You want short tracks? Are you better at the short tracks and you're in the playoffs? Here's your chance. You've got all these short tracks around you. You've got Richmond, Bristol, Martinsville. You've got Phoenix if you count that as a short track. There are the short tracks to your benefit. Are you better at the 1.5 milers? There are the 1.5 milers to help you. And if you're better at some of the more intermediate tracks that are kind of in the middle or maybe just a little bit different, then you can also find your way there. And if you're more of an all-around driver, obviously it is usually the best for you, as drivers like Hixenbaugh, kind of an all-around driver. He's been so good at every single type of track throughout this season. And speaking of Hixenbaugh, we're going to start with him as we go through the field here on 3xTV for tonight's race. And of course, starting with the pole sitter tonight and previous race winner. He took the win here in March earlier this season, and now he's continuing to stride where he left off of that win, trying to capture a second win in a row and sweep the Texas races this season. Currently still holding this lead, and he started up front. He's kept himself up front, and on the long runs, he's really shined, Andre.
Cameron Caldwell is holding his own in P2 right now. We've seen him have short run speed all night long. Now he seems to have found a little bit of long run speed, as he's not letting Bryson get that lead that he built up earlier on in stage 1. So maybe he made some adjustments, and we're going to be curious to see what he can do as this race goes on.
Jimmy Costarello started this race from second in the rookie here in the Galaxy Cup Series, and he has shown. Currently sitting third, and he's only lost one spot since the drop of the green flag, but now he's back to the podium spot. He's only got one more spot to get up to before he is where he started this race, but nonetheless, we've talked about him so much about his long run speed. He's been happy about his long run car, and it's really where it's come alive throughout these runs. Costarello has slapped the wall just a couple of times, but it's not been enough to really harm his race car. So Costarello's trying to look for another great run tonight here at Texas, sitting third at the moment.
And if you look back to P4, it's Cameron Stone who was involved in pretty much the first incident of the night. He got a little bit of damage, and that did slow him down. He fell back through the field, but through some really clever pit strategy, as well as getting some of this damage fixed up, he's managed to recover. He's back up into P4, and pretty much has been consistently within the top 5 for the entirety of stage 2.
Wayne Grassy, the honorary wheelman award from Andre Granbush, has had some fair share of fighting the wheel. You saw him loose on the back straightaway a little bit earlier in this race, but he has kept his consistency. Currently sitting in the top 5. You now see him getting around a lap car of Eric Wineland in the 31 machine, but he has been there throughout this entire run. You've really never seen him outside of this top 10. You've seen him in a group with some other cars, but now that he's found his footing by himself, he's been able to trot well on his own, still trying to catch up to Cameron Stone and hopefully trying to plan for the next fuel run if we stay green.
Maris Hickenbottom wheeling that 09 car. He is currently in the 6th position, and some might say he's really come to life in this playoff section of the season. He had some rough races early on, and then once the playoffs began, he really came to life, started getting some fantastic finishes, and as of going into this race, he was pretty much in position to put himself in the top 4 if he could get a good finish. So he's wheeling it. He's doing a great job holding down P6.
And holding down P7 is a driver that we last saw very dominant at Bristol. Rich Petruccio changed manufacturers from Ford to Chevy, so now rocking a Chevy Camaro, and this time the 7 machine. And now he's been also one of those drivers to watch for. He's also been one of the drivers that's not really shown too much, but he's always been there. A driver who really didn't have much of the spotlight tonight, but he has also kept his consistency, much like Wayne Grassy. They've been kind of on equal footing, those two, but Petruccio had a little bit of damage on the front end, but over that pit stop cycle, he's got it fixed. He's now got a relatively clean race car, and he's running well in this top 10, only 6 seconds behind the race lead.
And having just captured P8, that's Dalton Mobley. I was just getting ready to talk about Kevin Steele because he was in 8th. And then as I was doing that, here comes the 77 motoring around on the bottom. A little bit of front end damage on that machine. And we haven't talked about him a whole lot tonight, but he's kind of just been lurking. He's been running pretty well. He's been consistent. Hasn't really been involved in too many incidents. And sometimes that's what counts. So he's holding down P8, slowly working his way towards the front of the field. And right now, just trying to stay consistent.
Was also expecting to see Kevin Steele in 9th after falling that spot to Dalton Mobley, but indeed it is Randy Drumhiller as Christopher Amon just went down pit road. The 30 of Randy Drumhiller has been in the rear of this field most of this race. He started 28th. That's the lowest he's been in this field, so that's a good sign for that 30 machine. He's been relatively stable within the top 10, top 15, but he has not had the speed enough to get up to maybe the top 5 or really make his case up front just yet. He is on the back bumper of Dalton Mobley, so he is on the route to gaining positions, and with this top 10, he's really kind of working his way through the field in some sense. But Randy Drumhiller right now trying to get by Dalton Mobley, still in the top 10. He's gained 19 spots since he dropped the green flag.
Rounding out your top 10, that's Joseph Lester in the 9 machine. Poor Kevin Steele, man. He was in P8, getting ready to be talked about and through the field, and then right when we do so, he starts dropping back. But Joseph Lester was involved in that first incident, the parking lot on the backstretch, actually wound up coasting backwards through turns 3 and 4 at one point. But through it all, even with the wounded horse that he's currently trying to work with here, he's brought it up into P10. He's continued to get damage fixed every time he's come down pit road, and slowly he's been improving that car as the race has gone on.
Gonna look through the rest of this top 10, or at least the rest of this top 20. Kevin Steele, or we just was trying to mention ever since he fell back positions, he's kind of fallen off within this long run, and he lost about 3 spots there. He's now down to 11th. Preston McRae is currently sitting 12th, so back again with the Soda Awards at 11th and 12th, right near the track with each other. Alex Princeton is currently sitting 13th. His last lead lap car right now on the racetrack. Chad Edwards is 1 lap down, sitting 14th. Kyle Ammon in the 61 is 15th. 16th is Brandon Pierce. 17th is Jeremy Morrison. Then those are all the drivers 1 lap down, and you go to 2 laps down. Cody Bird, who we saw just exited pit road, he's 18th. Ryan McDaniel 19th. Eric Wineland currently with a kind of a broken engine, loss of power. He's sitting 4 laps down in 20th.
It's definitely been a race of perseverance for Eric Wineland. The incidents he was involved in really weren't his fault. He was just kind of a bystander. And unfortunately, he got a little bit of engine damage, which is the kind of damage that you can't really fix, and it's going to hold you back all race long. But despite it, he has persevered. He's stayed on the track, and he's continued to turn laps. And, you know, we've talked about the never give up attitude that this league has many times in the past. And the drivers continue to show it. I mean, no matter what happens, if the car still has 4 tires and an engine that somewhat functions, most of these guys are going to stay on the track and make the best of it, which is definitely what the spectators and the other competitors love to see. So Right now, you're looking at Bryson Hixenbaugh, who is in the lead. He's got a 2-second gap to Jimmy Costarelos, and he is, once again, just doing what he did in stage 1, slowly pulling away, extending that gap. Not quite as big of a gap as we saw in stage 1. I definitely think the competition is either making some adjustments and speeding up their cars, or maybe even just figuring out the lines a little bit better as time goes on. So maybe not quite as easy as of a drive for Hixenbaugh as it was before. Looking at Kevin Steele right now, back in P12. He came across the radio while we were doing through the field, and he said, "I don't know what's wrong. It's just not there." And then somebody asked him, they said, "Is it loose?" And he said, "Oh yeah." So definitely fighting the car. Might have went the wrong way on some adjustments. It's a very easy mistake to make. Definitely not the night that Kevin Steele wanted to have. He came in. He told us before the race he was very nervous. He wanted this race to go well, and he just was kind of anxious about it. And now it seems like his worst fears are coming true, as the car just seems to be getting away from him, kind of going the wrong way here. So hopefully he's going to be able to get that thing figured out. He does have time. We're not even quite halfway through the race, so plenty more pit stops, plenty more opportunities to get that thing figured out. Kevin Steele holding down P12.
And you said plenty more pit stops. Well, there is pit stops to come. We have yet to see any green flag cycle pit stops happen just yet. But I was just about to mention to you, Andre, about how long you think these drivers will like to stay out. We did see on this first run, on that long green flag run the first time around in that pit cycle, Hixenbaugh was the first one to go down pit road, then followed by some of the other leaders alongside. Then you had just a little bit of a scatter. Some drivers decided to stay out a little bit longer. Then you had the one standout driver in Cameron Stone, who stayed out practically throughout a very, very long run on the racetrack, all on those old tires before electing to go down pit road with no yellow coming out, possibly what he was banking on. Now it's a different situation because you have some other different drivers here, and now there could be a difference in terms of what that pit strategy is going to look like. Maybe there isn't a split between Stone and Hixenbaugh. As soon as I was mentioning Cameron Stone, he is down pit road, so he starts the pit cycle, and now lap number 152, going to try to make it all the way to lap 210. So was the last one to pit the last time around. He's the first one to pit on this cycle.
I think he definitely has been kind of gathering information in his mind about how this race is going, because that last run, obviously he tried the long run strategy. It did work out for him despite not getting the yellow that he probably would have liked to see. And because we've had so many long green flag runs, he probably is assuming that the same thing is going to hold true throughout the remainder of stage 2. So he has that confidence to be the first one down pit road, to come get fresh tires early on, get that short stop advantage over everybody else. And then when the tires wear later on and he's got the older set, he can cross that bridge when he gets to it. But definitely a little bit more confidence that this thing's going to stay green to take that short stop strategy.
Yeah, that could be it for Stone. And you said he was gathering information. That is something that these drivers are constantly adjusting to. That's one of the great things about watching these long runs, specifically when they're on the racetrack for such a long time. When the tires are wearing down, their cars are changing as the track is changing. Remember, times change in the sim. The time is accelerating as we're in the sim. It's about a solid afternoon when we started this race. The sun is now starting to go down just a little bit, so there's more shading on the racetrack. Now the track is also changing itself as we progress through this race. So it is always fun to watch how these drivers adjust, because some handle it better than others. Some are able to come up with certain ideas on the fly, if you will, and they come up with strategies that end up paying off. Some are not so successful on their fronts, and it's always been something to look for on this pitch strategy. So Cameron Stone was probably thinking about that long run, about him pitting so late into that run. Maybe he gathered all that information, all that intel, to decide that he was going to go down pit road first, rather than everybody else, who I believe have yet to pit. We really haven't seen anyone else go down pit road. And just an update on what happened in the garage. We have a new entry in Christopher Haman in the 17 machine. Another playoff driver. He was a couple of laps down. He was 21st at the time, and now he's exited the racetrack. His day is done. So he is also one of the drivers to lose points. Possibly Probst and Haman going to be two drivers almost in must-win situations coming to Martinsville next week.
Ken, kind of backtracking to what you were saying about drivers making strategy calls on the fly. It's something that's always interested me about sim racing, because in real life, if you're a real NASCAR driver, you've got a crew chief on the top of the pit box whose job it is to figure out what strategy would be best, what is optimal, and tell you exactly what to do. But in sim racing, a lot of these drivers don't have that. These guys are making laps around the track, trying to perform at their peak. and at the same time, figure out their own strategy. Try to figure out what the competition's doing, how the race has been run so far, gathering all this information and making calculations while driving 180 mile an hour around the circuit, which is definitely something that is easier said than done. So it's tough for these sim racers sometimes to make those calls on the fly, but you're right. Whoa, Chad Edwards down into the inside wall, loose out of turn 2, now sliding back up the back straightaway. He's going to veer back down out of the way of traffic, and the yellow flag has flown, I think. No caution.
Yellow.
No caution. Wow.
No yellow on the racetrack. This was, as we were looking at Cameron Caldwell, who just exited pit road. Hickson also made his way down, but this was a way different situation, a separate situation from what they were dealing with. Just up ahead of the 12 car. This is off turn 2. The Loudmouth Motorsports machine hits the inside wall, slows down, tries to get back on the track. Maybe it was hoping for yellow to come out on that instance, but the officials did not decide to throw it. So we are still under the green flag. Chad Edwards will have to go down pit road, get his damage fixed. So it'll be a lengthy pit stop for him. Costarelos has went down pit road. Rich Petrucco also down pit road. Also the number 9 of Joseph Lester. Hickenbottom and Wayne Grassi have yet to pit. And I think Grassi just signaled that he's going to go down pit road. So I believe he's going to use the inside lane to start slowing the car down. And indeed he does. So now the 7 goes down pit road. And the rest of the guys will start to complete this cycle through.
Now, to the viewers at home who might be wondering why that incident wasn't a caution, we've seen it a few times in the playoffs where iRacing does not really consider single car spins that are off the racing surface to be worthy of a caution like real NASCAR might. And when you think about it, it does make sense. Chad Edwards spun out of turn 2. For the majority of that incident, he was beneath the apron line, kind of out of harm's way. And I think definitely that's the right way to go about it in terms of how iRacing looks at that, because that very easily could have affected a lot of people's races, but because we didn't get the yellow, these guys get to keep competing. So now Damaris Hickenbottom, who did inherit the lead during that pit sequence, is going to come down pit road. He's going to try and get a smooth entry, 4 fresh Goodyears and fuel for that 09 machine. And behind him, Dalton Mobley is going to be trying to inherit the lead should he stay out. But no, he's going to come down pit road as well, making his way past that 09 machine. And he's going to be trying to get some service there as Chad Edwards remains in his pit stall, definitely getting a lot of damage fixed on that thing. And now we're looking back at the number 63, Bryson Nixonbaugh.
And I'm saying that the 57 did not pay off that short stop, that pitting the first time out of everybody else. It did not really work out for him. I think he was maybe anticipating to take the race lead away in that instance, but Hickenbottom on the fresh tires there had that advantage. He got by his teammate, so now Hickenbottom's back in this race lead. Mobley, we mentioned, who was the leader this time around, is now going to be further back as he just went down pit road and took his service. So I believe we're seeing a lot more grouping in terms of these pit cycles. We're not seeing some drivers stay out more. We're seeing a lot of these drivers pit, and then the drivers behind them or drivers around them are deciding to pit maybe 1 or 2 laps later. So it is now a lot more grouping this time around, where we're seeing drivers go down pit road more collectively as opposed to more scattered that we saw in that first one. Always changing on this racetrack. And Andre, you made a beautiful point about something in the sim. In real life, you have that crew chief, you have a big group around you to talk you through a lot of your decisions, and it's usually you, the crew chief, and the spotter if you're the driver. In iRacing, most of the time, you don't really have a spotter. Some of these drivers do have their spotters in the session, so they do have that customization there, because if you don't have a spotter, you'll just have the default iRacing spotter that gives you some vague information, but a spotter that's actually somebody you know, somebody that's actually there in the session with you, they're able to give you a lot more information. Also, the crew chiefs as well. And a lot of these drivers range from some drivers who have all of those to drivers who have none of those and really rely on just themselves behind the wheel to make all of their decisions. You're on board right now with Preston McRae, the number 13 in position. He's the 53 machine, currently 3 and 4, trying to make his way through. And he's also been one of those drivers to hang into the top 15. He's the last driver on the lead lap. He's currently sitting behind Kevin Steele, which has not yet recuperated from his situation just earlier before that pit cycle. So just a little bit of a look at what this track is kind of on these longer runs, or especially now, trying to catch up.
And if the viewers at home were listening in during that onboard, there's a lot of off-throttle time at this track, especially in 1 and 2, and I think that's something that sets this track apart from a lot of the other mile-and-a-halfs. A lot of these mile-and-a-halfs, tracks like Atlanta, you could pretty much flat foot on fresh tires, and even as the tires begin to wear. But here at Texas, you're rolling out of the throttle early on the entry, and you're only gradually rolling back into it as you work your way through the exit. So definitely a lot of talent, a lot of track knowledge that goes into navigating this place. And again, that's why while some people are kind of mixed about the racing product this track kind of puts on, I've always liked it simply for the fact that it is so difficult, which is something that you can't say about every mile and a half. But Bryson Hixenbaugh, I believe, just led his 100th lap of the race. So another dominant race so far for Bryson Hixenbaugh, but it's not in the books yet. We saw Bryson Hixenbaugh perform really well early on last week before an unfortunate incident took him out in stage 2. So definitely, I think he's going to learn from that. He's going to try and keep it clean, keep it consistent, and hopefully, at least he's hoping, he's going to continue to dominate the rest of the competition. He is probably hoping for a repeat of last week where something takes him out of the competition. He's got a good gap now. He's up to 3 seconds. And you mentioned earlier, Ken, that shortstop strategy didn't work out as well for Cam Stone as we would have thought. You're absolutely correct. And I think the reason for that was just quick thinking by Hixenbaugh. If Cameron Stone was to take the lead away from Hixenbaugh would have had to stay out at least 3 laps longer than Stone. And pretty much as soon as Hixenbaugh seen Stone come down pit road, he made the decision to come down pit road the very next lap and kind of just nip that in the bud, make sure he doesn't get too many laps on the fresher tires. And it ultimately worked out. He kept the lead. He's got a 4-second gap. Right now, you're looking at the battle for 6th, I believe. That is battle for 5th. That's between Damaris Hickenbottom and that 09 machine and Wayne Grassy and number 7 as they continue to be bumper to bumper, working their way through 1 and 2. One of the closest battles on the track right now. And at this point, Damaris Hickenbottom, between these two, is the only playoff driver. So he's the one racing for points, but Wayne Grassy is racing for everything else. He's racing for bragging rights. He's racing for, I believe there continues to be rewards every week for the highest finishing non-playoff driver. So he's racing for that. But most importantly, he's racing for his momentum. He's had some really great performances lately. He's been running really well all day long, and he's just trying to continue that forward as this race continues.
Yeah, there's still those rewards out for those non-playoff drivers. Of course, that reward was fully fulfilled at Kansas last week, where practically the entirety of the top 10 was all non-playoff drivers. And of course, the winner was a non-playoff driver in Matthew Woods. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight, so he won't be able to kind of back himself up and try to take a back-to-back win if he was strong here at Texas, which would have been interesting to see how he would have been mixed in this field tonight, how he would have handled his race car, especially with the conditions that we've seen so far in this race. I mean, Grassy is just the beauty of the mix-in between playoff drivers and non-playoff drivers. You still have motivation for those non-playoff drivers. There's still motivation. Of course, there's prizes, but the points is also motivation. The momentum is also motivation. And you're also gaining respect by doing these runs, having these top 5s, having top 10s. Even winning races gives you respect amongst your peers, and it really helps your case out as being a driver that's still strong, even though you're not contending for the championship. And you don't have to worry about points racing. You don't have to worry about where all these drivers are relative to you. You just have to worry about your own race, focus on your rest of the season, and try to fix something out, try to give yourself a better shot at the championship next season, getting your momentum off of this one and piggybacking off of that. You're right now looking at where Kevin Steele is sitting at the edge of this top 10. Dalton Mobley, Preston McRae are occupying 11th and 12th, but they're not too far behind these drivers. And we've seen Kevin Steele, I think with that mishap that we saw later in that run, it's really never picked back up for that number 44 machine. And I believe Hixenbaugh is right on the tail end of all 3 of these drivers. So not only is there a playoff driver here with a struggling night in this top 10, he also might get lapped in the process.
Bryson Hixenbaugh getting closer to that lap traffic as we ride on board. He's going to have to try and navigate them as smoothly as he can. An update on P2, there is a Cameron in second place, but it's no longer Cameron Stone. Cameron Caldwell made the pass pretty much textbook a few laps ago. Stone came across the radio and said, go ahead and have it, moved up half a lane, let him around, and Caldwell not quite closing the gap to the leader, but definitely pulling away from Stone. And again, I think this is a result of, like you mentioned, Ken, that short-stop strategy. He tried it, and it just didn't work out for him. He didn't inherit the lead, and now he's on the oldest tires in the field. So pretty much every car around him is going to be slightly faster, just as a result and just as by virtue of having slightly better tires. And he's going to continue to drop through the field as time goes on. but Caldwell now stalling the gap out. The gap was growing. It was 7 seconds and then 8 seconds to Hixenbaugh. But once it got to about 9 seconds, it sort of stalled out. So it's a large gap. I'm not sure he's going to be able to close it up without the help of a caution. But who knows? Anything's possible. He is continuing to hit his marks and chase down the leader. Jimmy Costarello is currently your highest running non-playoff driver. We mentioned him earlier with his long run speed. He has really had a strong showing tonight. And unfortunately, I think you mentioned he slapped the wall a few times on the corner exit, and I think that might start affecting his car because it seems like the long run pace that he had isn't quite there anymore. Now, whether or not that's as a result of hitting the wall or not, I'm not entirely sure. But he is closing in on the lap car of Chad Edwards, who sat in the pits for a while, getting some of that damage fixed after getting loose out of turn 2. Obviously, there was no caution for that incident, so he lost quite a bit of time there. He's just going to stay on the track, try and salvage what he can. But right now, you are on board with Kevin Steele, the 44 machine, who is in danger of going a lap down. That's going to make him the first car lap down should Bryson Hixenbaugh get around him. You can see on this rear bumper cam, Hixenbaugh is closing in. He navigated all 3 of those lap cars like we had mentioned he was going to, and now he's about to put Kevin Steele a lap down.
You talked about Chad Edwards. Of course, you are the team owner for that 34. Is there really anything or any advice you'd like to give to that 34 as a team owner on what he can do now from here on out to the end of this race and try to get a better run now?
Well, you can never control what happens in a race, and mistakes happen, accidents happen. Sometimes you just get loose out of a corner, and that happens. But when that does happen, the best thing to do is what a lot of these league members do. They stay on the track, they try and salvage what they can, and they just keep turning laps because you never know when the car ahead of you is going to be involved in an accident. Maybe they're going to blow an engine. Maybe they're going to downshift on accident. And if anything happens, you're going to gain that position. You're going to get those points back. And sure, maybe you're not going to win the race. You're not going to be in as good of a position had you not made a mistake. But as long as you stay out and keep fighting for it, you can salvage what you can. And that's pretty much what I would tell anybody to do, not just my own driver, but any of these guys. And obviously, we've seen that kind of perseverance through drivers like Wineland and even Kevin Steele, who, he hasn't really been involved in too many incidents, save for the lap 1 incident. But his car has been fighting him. It hasn't handled like he wanted. He's been struggling with it. He's come across the radio and said it's just not good to drive. But he's still out there. He's making laps. He's doing what he can to try and salvage it. As Bryson Hixenbaugh has put him a lap down. So now it is only 9 cars on the lead lap. Randy Drumhiller in the 30 is going to be the last car on the lead lap there in P9. But he's in danger of going a lap down. 24 seconds back. About 6 seconds from being lapped. Can Bryson Hixenbaugh catch him before the end of the stage?
We'll just have to state that there is still a while before the stage does conclude. We're now rounding about lap number 183. There's still a little bit to go until we get to lap number 210, which will be the conclusion of stage number 2. But I'll tell you, Andre, what I've noticed, especially comparing that first run in the first stage to this run in the second stage, is that pit cycle ended a lot later in the first stage than it did this time around. This time around, we had all those drivers just get through their pit cycles quickly, and they got them over with. And now all they just got to do is just run their way to the finish of the stage at lap 210, as opposed to in that first stage, you had a lot more drivers scattering around, drivers staying out, and lengthening that pit cycle in general to the point where it ended maybe with about, I'd say, 20 to 15 laps to go, or maybe even less to the stage end at lap number 105. So we're definitely seeing differences between that first stage and second stage. We're seeing drivers taking different approaches now later. And you said the drivers would take risks. You mentioned at the top of the show, Andre, where you said you'd like to see drivers make some splits, or you like to see drivers experiment. They have made those experimentations, and now I think they've kind of settled into a groove now where a lot of these drivers are finding their rhythm.
Definitely, it seems like there was a general consensus that the short stop was the way to go, because you're right, this pit sequence was probably one of the quickest pit sequences we've seen since we started broadcasting all the way back in Michigan. It was only a matter of 4 or 5 laps when pretty much everybody had cycled through and got their service completed. So not a whole lot of strategy this time around, and you're right. I think that is a result of that little bit of experimentation and just trying something different in stage 1. We saw a lot of different drivers do a lot of different things, and I think that all helped them kind of come to the consensus of, yeah, I think we're going to get another long green flag run. We're going to come in, get the service as quick as we can, get back out, and try to make it to the green and white checkered flag for that stage 2 finish. So that's definitely what they're doing. Cameron Stone now actually closing the gap to Cameron Caldwell. So he is starting to slowly catch back up to second place. Although both of them fighting cars that don't seem to want to cooperate as they both get a little bit loose coming out of turn 2. Seems to be a reoccurring theme with nearly everybody. On your screen, you're looking at the 44 machine, Kevin Steele. That is the first car a lap down, and it is the battle for the lucky dog. Is Dalton Mobley in that 77 machine not far behind. He's got about a 4-car length lead, and should we get a caution, whichever one of those guys is out front is going to be the one that gets to be put back on the lead lap. So definitely a worthy cause to be racing for as they continue to push each other through the corner.
Yeah, so it's Kevin Steele and Dalton Mobley going to be the two drivers fighting for that lucky dog spot. There are two other drivers in Preston McRae and Alex Princeton that are also one lap down that could be in that position for lucky dog, but fortunately Preston McRae is the closest to those two, and Alex Princeton is just way far behind Preston McRae, Mobley, and Steele respectively. Mobley and Steele are the closest ones on the racetrack fighting for that lucky dog spot, especially in Kevin Steele's case right now in the top 10. It's still a good run, even though he's in this top 10, but he for sure wants better to gain more points going into Martinsville next week. I know not many drivers in the playoffs are going to be looking forward to Martinsville. Maybe some drivers who are better on the short tracks, they can try to do their thing there, but especially with the chaos that Martinsville brings, it's not something that drivers want to look forward to. They don't really want to go to that track and really suffer through that if their race does not go well, if there are a lot of cautions, if we get a lot of wrecks along the way, if we get those crown horns, we get bent bumpers and all that. That's going to be interesting, and that's going to be something those drivers are really not going to be looking forward to going into Martinsville next week. But kind of covering what you said, Andre, you mentioned just a little bit ago that starting at Michigan when we started broadcasting this series and just how far we've been. It's already October, late October. We're going to push into November to the end of this season. It is unbelievable kind of how fast this season, or at least these playoffs, have gone by. In just a blink of an eye, I thought I was kind of learning drivers' names, still messing up some drivers' names in Michigan, and watching take over that race and win. As you're looking at the battle for second, Cameron Stone has found his way around, try to take second away from Cameron Caldwell, and they're still side by side. 57 is yet to get that advantage. He's going to get it at the line, and in a 1 and 2, he's going to have the advantage to the bottom. They're side by side for second.
The Cam and Cam show continues as the 12 car actually gets a good run off the top line. I think that's the first time I've seen somebody be able to defend on the top line pretty much all night long, and I think that's just because Cameron Stone is on those older tires, and to run the bottom, even though it's the preferred line, you do have to pinch the car down, and the geometry of the car just doesn't like that, especially when it tries to slide around and you got old tires. So Cameron Stone kind of needs to be able to arc that car. He needs to be able to enter high, drift it down low, and then let it drift back up to the wall line exit. And when he was down beneath the 12 car, he couldn't do that. He had to pinch it, which obviously was not very conducive to what he was trying to do there. The 12 car gets loose almost every time on exit. That car seems to be fading massively, and it happened one time when we were watching the gyro cam of Cameron Stone. It was a scary sight, and it always is anytime the guy in front of you starts to get sideways, because at that point you never know what's going to happen. Do you lift? Do you try to steer clear of him? Do you go high? Do you go low? Luckily, these guys have kept it together, and they continue to battle it out, bumper to bumper. Now Cameron Stone driving down the banking. He's going to get the run again, but instead of looking low, he's just going to stay on the bumper of the 12 and push him right into 3 and 4. But on your screen, that's Bryson Hixenbaugh at a 12.5 second advantage over this battle for second. So I mentioned he wasn't building the gap up as much as stage 1. Well, now he has. It's 12 seconds, about a quarter, actually about a third of a lap that he has built up over anybody else. And again, it's not a strange sight. This is a very familiar sight to see that 63 so far out in front. And it's just a testament to, not only his ability, but the setups that he's acquired. And not only that, but track knowledge. We've talked about how this is a driver's track. This is one of the more difficult 1.5 miles. That's why we've seen a lot of drivers who have been doing really well recently, maybe struggling a little bit more here, because this is a brutal 1.5 miles with a lot of off-throttle time, very sensitive on the steering input, especially in 1 and 2. And for a driver like Hixenbaugh to come out here and so far run it as consistently and as quickly as he has, it is very impressive. Now, Interestingly, for the battle for second, we got a lap car in the mix. That's the number 22 machine, and they're going to get around him on the bottom, but it did check up the 12 and the 57, caused a little bit of a minor accordion effect, but still, even through that, Cam Stone has not been able to complete the pass, so it seems like passing here is getting more and more difficult the longer these green flag runs go on.
And it's an enticing battle for second. You saw Stone go to the inside, but just as much they've equaled out on the tire wear, that 12 was able to maintain himself on the higher groove and make the pass and defend his position, which is something we have not seen all night long. First time Caldwell does that, first time any driver really does that in full-fledged view. So that's fun to see that he's able to make that work, although the 57 cannot put the throttle down as much in 1 and 2 as desired. So the 57 is still on the back bumper, trying to get around the 12 for second, trying to make it a high side 1-2 as Hickenbottom along teammates with him. He is currently sitting fourth. There goes the 57. One more time, going to try and get to the inside. Question is, will it be enough? And the answer doesn't seem to be yes just yet, as they're even off turn 4. They'll look to the line. The 57 will have an advantage. Now it's just back around to 1 and 2 to see what the 12 can do and see if he can maintain his spot. Now higher up the groove, but this time he chooses to stand back, and the 57 will take over second. But think about this. Half of the playoff grid is occupying 1, 2, 3, and 4. Hicksonball, Stone, Caldwell, and Hickenbottom. Steele is in 10th, so there's a long way to go for him. He's a 1 lap down still. He's lost a spot now to Lester, who's gone 1 lap down, so Lester's a lucky dog if we conclude stage 2 from here on out. But as we've crossed the line now, and as Hickenbottom comes around, we'll get 10 more to go until stage 2 ends.
A scary moment for Jimmy Costarellos actually garnered the attention of some of the other drivers. He got really loose there, almost lost it. Cody Bird said, "Good save, Jimmy." But now he is under fire from the number 7, Wayne Grassy, continuing to lurk just outside and around the top 5 as he is applying that pressure to the 25. We're riding on board now as he's going to look low into 3 and 4. The 25 is going to give it to him. And now Wayne Grassy back to the top 5. So currently the highest running non-playoff driver and continuing the good run he's had all night long.
And he's continuing his run, but Costarellos with that car that came alive in the longer run is now starting to fall back to about 6 now as he got passed by Wayne Grassy. So Grassy's now got about less than a second or so until he catches up to Damaris Hickenbottom. So the separation between those drivers isn't as large as what I probably expected. It's more large when you get to the difference between Cameron Caldwell and Damaris Hickenbottom, which is about 7 seconds, and then obviously 14 seconds to the race leader in Bryson Hickenbottom. Now 9 laps to go until we get to the end of stage number 2, and it's been a relatively calm stage. We didn't really see any yellows. We didn't see really any outstanding moments too much. We've just seen some passes, some memorable moments maybe in stage 2, some passes along the way. Obviously that battle between the 57 and the 12 where they were hanging even practically through an entire lap, that was also fun to watch. But other than that, it's been business as usual through the second stage, especially for Bryson Hickenbottom, just getting what he needs to do, just doing what he needs to do now. You're on board with Randy Drumhiller, who's currently sitting 8th. He's the last driver on the lead lap, and now this long run has enabled Hickenbottom to lap more drivers, so that puts Kevin Steele in a further hole.
Yeah, it's unfortunate news for that 44 machine. He fought so hard with Mobley to keep that lucky dog position, but ultimately it was in vain because the pace that 63 has is just so great that he's been able to continue to lap the field. I mean, he's worked his way not only past Joseph Lester, but now, as we ride on board with Drumhiller, that's the 63, he's going to speed on by, and now we are down to 7 cars on the lead lap. Rich Petrucco now the last car on the lead lap, 28 seconds back, so that is almost an entire lap. He's only got about half a corner separating him and the leader, so before too long, I do believe Hickenbottom is going to put him a lap down. Cody Bird did the radio and said that he is pitting, so I'm not sure what's the situation with the 64 team, possibly some damage or something else causing him to come down pit road. Now Damaris Hickenbottom saying he might pit. Not sure what's going on here, or maybe he was responding to Cody Bird, but regardless, kind of an interesting situation for that 64 team.
And so he will take his trip down pit road. He said it numerous times on the radio, just pitting in. And now he has made his way down, so he will go down a pit road. And I think Hickenbottom was responding because I'm pretty sure they can make it just all the way now. Just 5 laps to go until the end of stage number 2 as we round about lap number 206. Now coming to lap 207 for Bryson Ixabal. He gets around Chad Edwards in the 34. Is now continuing his stride to stay up front and continue to lead this race like he has done all night long, practically, apart from maybe some moments with Cameron Caldwell and the rest of the guys who have been battling with him along the way. Apologies for the background noise, but nonetheless, it's been, other than my dog's noises, it's been calm in this race so far.
Calm is a great way to describe it. I mean, other than the little bit of chaos we had early on at stage 1, we've had a lot of single file, methodical racing. And I think that's one of the things that we expect to see when we come to these 1.5 mile tracks is a little bit more methodical racing. You just got to take it easy, plan on the long runs, make sure that you have a strategy for if the race stays green, because chances are it will. And I think that's kind of what has allowed a lot of these guys that are in up front to do so, is they've planned for these long runs. They know how to race these tracks, and it's worked out pretty well. Rich Petrucco is now about to go a lap down. We are on lap 209 of 210, so we got 2 laps to go in the stage. Should Petrucco go a lap down, he will be the first car lap down in position to get the lucky dog. As long as Bryson Ixabal doesn't catch anybody else, he does have a ways to go before the next lap car. So Petrucco, I would say, is pretty much secure in making sure he restarts on the lead lap. But it's kind of an exclusive club at this point, Ken. I mean, look at this. We have 7 cars on the lead lap, soon to be 6 if Hixenbach can complete the pass on his final lap, if he does try to make the pass. And so really, if you're on the lead lap, you're pretty much secure in getting a top 10 position, which is what a lot of these playoff drivers definitely wanted to see.
Certainly what they wanted to see, apart from the 44 of Kevin Steele, who will be 10th and will be not in the lucky dog position, as Bryson Ixabal will come off of turn number 4. He'll take the checkered flag for lap 210 in stage number 2. So stage sweep for the number 63 Bryson Ixabal. Now we'll just have to wait until the rest of the field and the rest of the top 10 will make their way around. Cameron Stone's in second. You see him slowly coming off turn 4. There he is in that silver Ford Mustang, but now they decided to throw the yellow a little bit earlier, as there's some lap cars along the way in the top 10. So yellow flag out. Stage 2 has been concluded, and then Bryson Ixabal will win both of those stages and gain all the maximum points he can with the amount of the gap that he had going into this race. And the gap that he had into this race was 93 points. Unbelievable amount of points carried to his name with the amount of dominance that he's had all season long. It has not really looked too difficult for that 63. It's been a long road. He had some troubles along the way, but that 63 has been just so good throughout this entire season nonetheless. 13 wins, looking for 14 tonight. As the yellow flag comes out, they catch the pace car, and now it's just a matter of everyone going down pit road, Andre.
Yeah, and remember, that's a 93-point gap after DNFing the last race. So, I mean, that just kind of shows even more just how dominant he's been this season to kind of acquire that many playoff points and really secure his position. To the point where I think if this was real NASCAR, they'd be scratching their head trying to figure out a way to get rid of that playoff point rule so that people maybe don't put themselves in the same situation Hixenbach has managed to put himself in this season. But coming down pit road, remember, only 7 cars are going to be eligible to pit this time around, because there is only 7 cars on the lead lap. So Hixenbach, Cameron Stone, as well as I'm sure everybody else on the lead lap, they're going to work their way through the pits. And honestly, this is probably one of the most pressure-free pit sequences we've seen in a while for a lot of these guys, because even if you make a mistake and you lose some track position, you can't really fall that far back because everybody else is a lap down. So pretty much a clean stop for everybody except for the 57, who I think had to back up a little bit there. He actually slid a little bit through his stall, so maybe losing a little bit of time there. But again, not going to be too costly. 7 cars on the lead lap, you lose a spot or 2, no big deal.
And also, it's not as crowded on pit road. When you only have 7 drivers, a lot of them have pit stalls that are relatively scattered amongst each other through the 40, or at least the 31 stall grid that we have down pit road. And they're all within distance of each other, so no contact or no issues down pit road for them. They can easily, if they lose time, they won't lose as much ground, like you said, and they won't really have to deal with other cars getting out and possible contact on the way if they're going into pit road or coming out. So they're just all going to be stable, all clear of each other. But interesting thing here is Cameron Caldwell has taken over second off pit road from Cameron Stone. So Cameron Stone falls back a couple of spots to Wayne Grassy. I think Costarellos. No, Costarellos actually goes out of pit road. Petrucco gains spots there. He's behind the 57. Costarellos will be the last driver out in 7th. And now everyone's going to head themselves down pit road. I believe Randy Drumhiller will be the last driver, or at least he'll be the driver to get a wave around here this time by, he goes down pit road. So now it's just a matter of everyone cycling through. And in this second group, it's a lot more crowded than what we saw in that first one.
As the second group works their way through the pit road, we're going to throw it to commercial real quick. But before we do, I'm going to hand Cameron Stone the honorary Kyle Busch Award for excellence in messing up your pit stops, because he seems to do it every single week. I've mentioned it in every broadcast. I talk to him about it after every race, and he always gets a laugh out of it, but it's true. So he's made his mandatory pit stop mistake for the race, and now he's going to have to work his way through the field. Anyways, we're going to throw it to commercial, and when we get back, more racing from Texas.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Back live at the Texas Motor Speedway, Andre Grambush and Kenneth Bueno with you as we have just completed our pit cycles, and just in time, we have gotten the 1 to green signal from the iRacing official pace cars. And that means the drivers that were there up in front, they're going to take their lap around, take their wave around, go to the back of the field, and that means Bryson Hicksaball and Cameron Caldwell will once again have a meeting at the summit on the next restart here. As they go side by side, they'll be filing out row number 1. Interesting thing that we noted just before we reached that break, that Cameron Stone did fall to, I believe, P number 5. He'll start from the top 5 in 5th as he lost positions to Hickenbottom, Wayne Grassy, and Cameron Caldwell. He came into pits in 2nd, right behind his fellow teammate in Hicksaball. So now this puts 8 drivers on the lead lap with Randy Drumhiller as he made his wave around. Everyone else, though, is on 1 lap down or more. Especially in a case like this for Kevin Steele, Andre, what's really needed now that you're 1 lap down, you're starting this stage, and you really have to rely on maybe either caution or maybe another pit cycle?
Well, he's 1 lap down, and he's not even in the lucky dog position. So what he needs now is a little bit of chaos and to not be a part of that chaos. Give him a few cautions, he can get back up on the lead lap, but barring that, he's just going to have to bide his time and hope that the cards fall in his favor. So that's going to be what Kevin is going to have to do. And, as consistent as he is, I think he can pull it off. But the pace car, speaking of pulling it off, there goes the pace car, making a hard left turn. And boom, they're on the loud pedal. Bryson Hicksaball getting that classic jump he tends to get. And the 12 car is going to follow in behind him.
Boom, there it is. An explosive start for Bryson Hicksaball. He'll easily shoot up to about a car length or 2 above Cameron Caldwell, so everyone will single file out. And I believe it's not too chaotic around here. There's not many side-by-side battles. Now where Kevin Steele is, there is a little bit of battles brewing up. There's Chad Edwards, Dalton Mobley. There's Joseph Lester. That's the car he needs to pass to get to the lucky dog position if a yellow will come out. There's Costarellos falling to the outside, so we'll keep an eye on him as he's had the long run speed. He'll probably pick his way back up like we've seen him do so many times throughout tonight's race. So they're side by side there as well. You're on board with that Coca-Cola Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, and now he's gone by the 25. He's got 1 more to get around for the lucky dog.
And I think he's going to be able to pull it off. I know he's probably been throwing the wrench of that car every time he's come down the pit road, trying to figure out what kind of track bar adjustment, what kind of tire pressure adjustments are going to kind of resolve this issue he's had with the handling all night long. And so far, at least on the short run, it seems like the car is better than it's been all night long, as he has made a pass and he continues to hunt down the next car ahead, Joseph Lester, for the lucky dog position, closing the gap ever so slightly. A little bit further up ahead, Cameron Stone has fallen back to Kevin Steele. So Kevin Steele obviously a lap down, but he is going to make the pass, and he's right on Joseph Lester for that lucky dog position. But I'm continuing to watch the 57 as he is trapped on the high side. It really seems to be freight training him. He's going to drop back position after position. Now, finally, going to cycle into the bottom there, single file, but only at the cost of having lost a solid 4 or so positions.
And Stone will fall back to 7th, almost 8th now, but Randy Drumheller is still a little bit further back. So he is still on the lead lap, of course, but he's falling to the tail end of it. This is really the first time we see this from Cameron Stone. So I'm not sure what might have changed on this restart compared to what happened last time around. Maybe just trying to hang on for a long run, maybe trying to save his tires. Maybe that's the reason why he's falling back those positions, so that later in this run he can save up his equipment, try to use it up near the end, and also kick back through the field and where he was, where he started, or maybe even further up where he was before that green flag cycle. Well, speaking of which, look up front and you'll find Cameron Caldwell, who made his way around Bryson Ixenbaugh for the race lead. So again, a change of positions, a trade of hands between these top two for the race lead. Wayne Grassy now trying to join the party. I think Hickenbottom and Petruccio are also thinking to spoil this as well. So it's a 5-car breakaway, actually 4-car breakaway, with Joseph Lester, a lap car, kind of further behind.
I tell you what, these stages just seem to repeat themselves. That 12-car short run speed is just about unmatched. You know, when we get these short 5-10 lap runs, he's definitely the fastest car on the track and a force to be reckoned with. And it's only later on, once things have begun to kind of calm down and everybody's cars have settled in, he starts to lose a little bit of ground. But remember, in stage 2, he didn't lose as much ground in the long run as he did earlier on. So I think he's continued to work on this car and he's getting things figured out. Bryson Ixenbaugh poking his nose up high, but he thinks better of it. He lets off the throttle and then files back in right behind him. All of this battling allowing Wayne Grassy, who also has a short run setup over here, to close in and join the fray, as you had mentioned there, Kim. So he is right up against the 63, trying to get back up into P2. Remember, he was running second for quite a while earlier in the race, back in stage 2. So we're going to see what he can do. Demarius Hickenbottom sliding way up the track on exit. Not sure if he made contact with the wall or not, but it sure was close. So that is going to allow Rich Petruccio to get around him. And I believe P4 is about as far up the grid as Petruccio's ran all night.
And Petruccio also having a relatively low run, and you saw Hickenbottom, he kind of overshot, had a really wide entry into 1 and 2. I think he might have just messed up the corner just a little bit, kind of swerved up high, was a little bit tight, and then lost that position to Petruccio. He's now behind Joseph Lester. Remember, he is still a lap car, so Hickenbottom can easily get around him. This is not for position. What is for position, however, is the top 2, and I think you've said it right, Andre, where it's the same thing over and over again. We're seeing this repeatedly with Cameron Caldwell, with Bryson Ixenbaugh. We see it with Wayne Grassy in the mix as well. It's just the same thing over with Cameron Caldwell. When he takes the lead, you see him defend to the bottom. You know what to expect from him. And I think Bryson Ixenbaugh could take that to mind. He has taken advantage every single time, but I believe he's just trying to let Caldwell just use up his stuff, trying to defend his position as he's peeking his nose to the high side, trying to make something work is there. And he actually does have a run, so side by side now off turn 4. So even at the line, first time we've seen Ixenbaugh execute the highline move into 3 and 4, but unfortunately falls back to 1 and 2 as he does not have the ground to make up for it in that particular case. Wayne Grassy now to 3rd. It's a 3-car breakaway with Richard Petruccio kind of sneaking through in 4th. And if you're getting an update on Kevin Steele, he's still only 1 spot out of the lucky dog position should we get a yellow from here on out. So 44 still has about 3 cars to get by before he can catch up to Joseph Lester. And now Cameron Stone has found his way back up, found that long run speed, or just that speed for now, and he's gone by Hickenbottom. Going to try to get around and get a run throughout the rest. Says Hickenbottom, you're on board, or Ixenbaugh, you're on board with him as he's still aiming to get a run in that 12.
And again, it looks like he's going to try the high side. It's an interesting move. The only driver we've seen all night long that really has been able to pass on the high side was the leader, Cameron Caldwell. He did it earlier in the race, and I was pretty surprised by it. It was a great move, and now Ixenbaugh trying to emulate it, although to a little bit less success thus far. He's tried it twice. It hasn't been able to really play out. But in 1 and 2, he really gets these great runs on exit. But due to the defensive driving that Caldwell has been able to pull off, it just hasn't quite gone the way he wants it to. Now again, the 3rd time in a row, Ixenbaugh is going to go to the high side in 3 and 4, and it's just not quite going to work. The 12 car powering by on the preferred line, down low. And again, through the throttle, you're going to see the 63. He's going to look high. He's going to look low. He's looking everywhere, trying to find an opening to try and get the lead back, get in that clean air where we know his car handles the best out front. But thus far, the 12 car is still there. I mean, his setup is still working out on this short run, but right now, there he goes on the bottom. He actually found that opening. 12 car is going to try and hold his own on the top. Gets a little bit loose, and now Bryson Ixenbaugh back to P1.
Ixenbaugh back to the first position, and he's gotten around Cameron Caldwell. So again, it's fouled out the same way it did last time and the time before, where Caldwell would defend to the bottom. He'd have control of the race lead, but then Ixenbaugh would find his way back around, and he would take over the race lead and try to gap himself again. Cameron Stone has picked up back to fourth. He's gotten that run over. Now he's trying to hunt down Wayne Grassley for third and try to get back up to the positions and make up for the lost ground that he had on pit road that time around, where he overshot his pit box, lost a couple of tenths there. There is a 3-car pack, however, behind them. Rich Petrucco, Jimmy Costarelos. Now Damaris Hickenbottom makes it a 4-car pack, and Joseph Lester, who's sitting on the lucky dog positions. And in this sort of situation, Andre, where you're in the middle of the pack, you're a driver 1 lap down, but you're in the lucky dog spot, there's really not much you can do other than just try to hang there, because you don't want to fall back to Kevin Steele, as that was very close to Costarelos. Almost had a moment as Lester's loose down to the apron.
He got way sideways. I'm not sure if he was... It looks like he was able to recover it. He was. He's back in the quad oval. He got it going the right way, but in the process, he has given up the lucky dog spot to Kevin Steele. So Kevin Steele finally getting that lucky dog position. We're going to take a look at the replay. He tried to go 3 wide. Ultimately, just a little bit of contact down on the apron, drifting it. I can hear the Eurobeat coming from inside of his car, and he actually saves it. So a good recovery by Joseph Lester, and he's going to be able to get back in there, I think, if he can just get this thing going the right way and try to get back in that lucky dog position. Just that slight contact, man. That's all it takes, I'll tell you.
Yeah, and that was bare contact between Lester and the 25 of Costarelos, and that forced him to slow down. He was about to let them go, but it was just a bad placement on the track where he can let them go, because he was all the way to the bottom. They were already 2 wide, so it was practically just 3 wide there, and the 9 had to step on the brakes, and then got in that merging between the white line, the banking, and the apron. Had a little bit of a drift there, and then he's back straight. He is back straight, and he's all good, so no yellow around the racetrack. But good news, though, for Kevin Steele. That mistake allowed the 44 to get into that lucky dog position in 9th. So that was all a beneficiary for that 44. He definitely wanted to see that coming, although he was not quick enough. He was not able to get up to that 9 machine. But with that mistake, he's back up to the lucky dog position. So all the 44 now has to bank on is a yellow down the road.
Well, we gave Kevin Steele the good news that he got the lucky dog position. Now it's time to give him the bad news, and that is that he has the number 53, Preston McRae, right on his tail trying to take it back from him. So just as quickly as he gained it, he's now under pressure to have to try and defend it. So Kevin Steele has not had it easy tonight. He's been battling a poor handling car by his own admission. He's been involved in some minor fender benders, and he has really just had to scrap for this lucky dog position. And you know, the bad thing about fighting for lucky dog is it all kind of comes down to the leader. No matter how well you do, no matter how many cars you pass to try and take that lucky dog position back, if the leader laps another driver, you're no longer the lucky dog. So it requires skill and luck, and unfortunately, the last stage it didn't quite work out for the 44. He's hoping things are going to go different this time, so he is giving it everything he can to try and defend. Damaris Hickenbottom has dropped back to P8. He's the first car, or the last car on the lead lap, I should say. Drumhiller ahead of him. Cameron Stone, while we weren't looking, actually looked up in P3. He did get around Wayne Grassley. He's 3 seconds back from the leader now, and about 7 tenths back from Cameron Caldwell. So a bit of I think this is probably the biggest separation for the top 3, at least this early on in a run, we've seen in a while. I mean, we've got a good few seconds between pretty much everybody in the top 3 and the top 4. And everybody's just kind of running their race. And I don't think that really surprises me, especially for these drivers that have short run setups. These guys are banking on the fact that things are going to get a little bit more heated at the end of the race, maybe some late race cautions, at which point those short run setups are going to be their trump card. It's going to be what maybe allows them to take the lead and defend it in the closing laps, you know, the one lap that matters, you know, the final lap. So they're just going to be turning laps, trying to keep it clean. And for pretty much everybody else, they're doing the same thing. Hickenbaugh extending his gap, now 1.5 seconds back to second place. 2.3 to Cam Stone. A lot of separation going on in the field right now.
Yeah, lots of separation, including the race leader up to second. So it's now 1.589 seconds between Hicksonball and Cameron Caldwell. And it's again the same story where Hicksonball, he gets by Caldwell and then he's able to just drive away the rest of the way through and hold on to spots. But I'm just curious to see if any yellows spawn out of this stage, because at this stage, we talked about it under break, Andre, where these stages are kind of split up evenly compared to some of the other races we see, where the third stage is usually always the longest by a large margin. You see the first two stages are about equal the amount of stints, and then the third stage is just the big dog, or the longest one throughout the rest of the race to the checkered flag. But here tonight, you have 105 laps in each stage, but then you have just a little bit over 105, maybe about by 10 or so laps to in stage 3. All the way to the checkered flag, so it's not as large, and we've just gotten the margin of 100 laps to go. So we are still closing in on the home stretch of this race. You're now looking at Damaris Hickenbottom in 8th right now, fighting for that last lead lap spot. There's Kevin Steele, who still actually held his ground above Preston McRae, who has yet to find his way by. He's actually stuck now behind Dalton Mobley, and I believe another car there as well. Actually, no, just Mobley separating the two. So they're all together, and Steele right now just holding his spot, gonna get under Costarellos at the moment.
Holding his spot indeed, and it's probably one of the closest battles on the track as he continues to power his way by Costarellos. Obviously not for position, as Costarellos is the last car on the lead lap, but he is further cementing his lucky dog position. The more separation he can get between him and Dalton Mobley, the better. He wants more cars between him, and so he is going to just continue doing what he's doing. I mean, you asked, what should Kevin Steele do to try and make up for the incidents that have occurred for him so far this race? This is it. This is what he needs to do, and he's doing it perfectly. So, anywho, how about we throw it to a crank it up? I want you guys at home to listen to the off-throttle time in turn 1 and 2, because it's something that you're not going to see at too many mile and a half, and it really shows the finesse that these guys have to have around this track.
2.1 seconds is the gap between Cameron Caldwell and Bryson Hicksonball, and you're seeing on the screen a battle for position number 5, this top 5 territory between Randy Drumhiller and Rich Petrucco. They have been at it for a couple laps, and now Kevin Steele has been in this group. Damaris Hickenbottom has fallen back as a result through this long run. Costarellos also as well has not been able to find that long run speed just yet, so he's further back in this field as well. A large group here, Andre, between what we see from Wayne Grassi all the way up to the race leader. This is the biggest group so far we've seen in this one.
it's the biggest group, and the 44 has the kind of stressful task of trying to navigate it as quickly as he can while being pressured by Dalton Mobley for the lucky dog position. As many laps as we have completed here, as long as this run has gone on, the 44 has not been able to shake the number 77 of Dalton Mobley. They have been together, pretty much stuck like glue, following each other through the field, trying to get that lucky dog position for themselves. Now, so right now, nobody is really in danger of being lapped to take away that lucky dog position from Kevin Steele. The last car in the lead lap is Damaris Hickenbottom, 9.6 seconds back. So only about a third of a lap. And it's going to be a long while before the leader manages to catch up to him should this stay green. So for the time being, it's going to be up to Kevin Steele to continue to finesse his way through the field, through the pack, keep that speed. And if he can get the lucky dog position, I think we might see something out of him, because he has shown that he is faster than a lot of these lead lap cars. He's gotten around a lot of them, though it's not for position. He's shown that he is faster than them. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens to him later on. We're going to keep an eye on that as everything develops. On your screen right now, that's Cameron Caldwell, your current second place runner, 2.7 seconds back from the leader, and just a phenomenal run he's had all night long. Obviously, we've talked about it time and time again. He's got that short run setup, but despite that, even in these long runs, he doesn't drop too far back. A lot of times, you see drivers with short run setups, and they'll go from first all the way back to 7th, 8th, 9th. But when his car fades, he really only drops back to second or maybe third at the worst. So right now, if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's looking at bare minimum a podium finishing position, which as a playoff driver who already is able to cement himself pretty firmly within the top 4 after having a good run last week and capitalizing on the misfortune of the other playoff contenders, this is only going to further the gap between him and the drivers who are on the outside looking in of the Final Four. So definitely a consistent run that he's had. Now, right, what you're seeing is the 25 machine being put under fire by the 44, Kevin Steele, continuing his march through the field, trying to, again, further himself from Dalton Mobley. It's been the story that we've been talking about so much because it could be a game changer, like we said. So coming across the radio right now, Ken, I'm not sure what's going on, but the 64 machine is making yet another pit stop. I'm not sure if this is unscheduled or if this is a scheduled stop.
Cody said over the radio he's currently 14th right now. He said, not sure if I'm clear, but I'm pitting this time. So Cody Bird now makes his stop down at pit road. He'll stoop down to the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is awfully agonizingly slow for a lot of these drivers, and he'll make his service down at pit road again. Still mentioning that these drivers do need a pit, of course, through the middle of this segment if a yellow does not come out. If a yellow comes out, obviously the opportunity is there, and we'll probably see the answer. There's a look right there. Contact between the 30 of Drumhiller and Kevin Steele. That could have been very big coming out of turn number 2. Luckily, no harm, no foul. They'll stay within each other. Now the 44 will fall to the 09, possibly to the 53. That is for the lucky dog position. So they're side by side off turn number 4. Meanwhile, another battle brewing up, this time for second place. Cameron Stone in this run has caught up to Cameron Caldwell in the number 12. So the Cameron and Cam show right now working into turn number 3.
And the 57 is going to get the run on the bottom going into the corner, but not quite as much confidence in his car. He actually riffs a little bit, not quite confident to stay on the throttle and really side draft the 12. The 12 did come across the radio. We apologize for cutting off Cam Stone. I don't think he really cut him off. I think that was just 2 cars running their optimal lines that sort of were going for the same real estate, but nonetheless, Cam Caldwell apologizing for what he perceived as cutting him off in the incident. And Cameron Stone, we've seen pretty much all race long. He has good long run speed, but it's not quite good enough to catch up to Bryson Hickenbaugh. It seems like of the long run cars, Hickenbaugh just keeps getting better and better as these laps wind down. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. When your competition is somebody who has 13 wins in a season, sometimes being good just isn't good enough. And I think we're seeing that with, really talented drivers and really great setups on these cars, just still fighting for second place. That's the battle for second place, the battle for lucky dog, because right now the lead is pretty much uncontested as Bryson Hickenbaugh now gets a good run, or not Bryson Hickenbaugh, Cameron Stone, I apologize, gets a run on the bottom on Cameron Caldwell. He's going to get clear of him, but here comes the 12 back on the high side, maybe fighting back.
This has been one of the better things to watch throughout the night as they've been kind of within each other. They've been kind of on equal footing in terms of their cars. They've been relatively equal. They've been fast along each other. They've been able to hang with each other, unlike a lot of these other drivers where You know, much in the case of Ixenbaugh, he can get around Cameron Caldwell and just kind of run away with it. With Stone and Caldwell, they've been able to maintain themselves evenly most of the time. And now Cameron Stone has kind of gapped the 12 just a little bit. But to the credit of Cameron Caldwell, he's been put in the best position he's been put in all playoffs long, because if you remember, he's had a lot of rough runs in the early stages of these playoffs, in the opening rounds. We talked about how bad it's been for that 12 machine and that team specifically, but then over the course of these playoffs, they found their style, they've picked it up, and now they're in a chance, or they're in an opportunity to advance, to get into the championship four and fight for a title at Phoenix in 2 weeks. And Cameron Caldwell, even with like the performance that he had at Kansas last week, with all the playoff drivers having issues, you'd probably expect that Cameron Caldwell could get comfortable and possibly not have a good run here tonight, but it has been the opposite. The only 2 drivers he's really fallen to have been either a non-playoff driver in Jimmy Costarellos, maybe Wayne Grassi, but the other 2 that have been able to get the best of him are the drivers who have the most points stacked up on their names in the round of 8, Bryson Ixenbaugh and Cameron Stone. There's really not a chance that Caldwell will get by those drivers unless he gets a win in the meantime. But if he doesn't get a win, he's beating all the other drivers on points that he needs to. Kevin Steele, Damaris Hickman, and Christopher Hamann, and Zach Probst, those drivers, all of those playoff drivers, he's able to get by, he's able to stay ahead of. And here at Texas, he's been putting that to good use, to his advantage. Right now, sitting P3. So phenomenal run for that 12, and what a way to pick it up after the initial runs at Darlington when we started this round of 16.
Phenomenal run indeed, and you're right, this has been a huge turnaround in fortune for Cameron Caldwell. Going from what I would consider one of the most unlucky drivers in the league to suddenly having some of the best luck. So quite the turnaround. But going back to Kevin Steele, you talked about him a little bit. The battle for the lucky dog is hotter than ever because Preston McRae is right on his tail, still putting him at risk of losing that lucky dog position. And I was listening into the radio. There was a little bit of chatter about the incident between Kevin Steele and Randy Drumhiller. A little bit of fireworks going on. I think these drivers weren't too pleased with each other. They've since kind of calmed it down and cleared the radio, but there's something interesting to note. So we're going to have to see what happens should these guys get together on the track again. 44 going down low past Damaris Higginbottom, where he's going to try to, the 09, getting back on the throttle on the high side, not quite going to be able to defend. So a little bit more room between him and the next car behind for the lucky dog position. That's what he wants to see, but while that's going on, the leader is getting closer to lapping another car. Damaris Higginbottom currently 16.5 seconds back. That's about half a lap, a little bit over half a lap. So again, the threat of having the guy in front of you lapped is looming, and it will come eventually should this stay green. But for right now, all the 44 can do is hang tight, keep doing what he's doing, and just make sure he stays ahead of the car behind.
And now it's a job for Cameron Stone to try to catch up to Ixenbaugh, but now, at least through this run, we've gotten deep enough that the topic of pit cycles start to come into mind once more, and I believe they do have to pit at least one more time till the end of this race, where they can be good till the end and have that run. They won't have to worry about fuel. Maybe tires if we get yellows or late race yellows, but apart from that, they really won't worry about the fuel run and running out or being short a couple of laps unless they make a really bold strategy. You're on board right now. You're riding with Preston McRae, who we saw had a shot to get by Kevin Steele, but he just was not able to, and he's still on the back bumper, so the pressure is still there in the rearview mirror of that 44 machine. He's still got a lot to worry about, other than, of course, everything happening around him, just hoping that a yellow comes out, hoping that something happens so that the 44 can get that lucky dog spot. You see the 53 just kind of overdriving 1 and 2. It's going to open the gap just a little more, but Kevin Steele just trying to hang on at this point.
He did overdrive the entry a little bit, but it kind of had the side effect of giving him a good run out of the corner. And the gap kind of remained the same there. So a bit of a lucky break for the 53 machine as he continues to hunt down Kevin Steele, trying to get that lucky dog position for himself. You can see on the lap time comparisons that lap after lap, the 53 was slightly faster. Preston McRae was clocking better laps, but Texas is a tough track to pass at. It's very one lane. We've talked about it a lot. And at this point, really all he can do is stay behind the 44 and hope that he makes a mistake, hope that he makes a bobble at least big enough for him to get around him. And that's what he's doing. So the battle for the lucky dog has been absolutely intense for quite a majority of this race. I would say most of stage 3 and even part of stage 2. So that has been developing all night long. The 44, speaking of developing, Kevin Steele is actually catching up to Randy Drumhiller slightly, the driver who he had a bit of a disagreement with. And now Kevin Steele goes wide. Preston McRae to the bottom for the lucky dog position. Is going to be at his quarter panel with that preferred line. Now the 53, Preston McRae, is the new lucky dog candidate.
And he's the new soda leader, at least for now, as Kevin Steele will try to try and get it back around. But this is still the battle for the lucky dog spot. So Kevin Steele did not want to see this happen. He did not want to see that 53 get by. It was just that mishap in 1 and 2 that allowed this to happen. Again, that 53 has made his fair share of mistakes, so we could see that 53 get pushed into a mistake once more, and that 44 can try to use that to his advantage one more time and try to get around. But the gap has now kind of maintained. It's kind of grown just a little bit between those two drivers. And meanwhile, I said it was about 2.2 seconds when we got back from that crank it up session. It's now up to 5.8. So Hixenbaugh just continues to do his business the way he has. And I think now at this point, Andre, he's probably going to get around lap cars at some point as soon as we get down to this pit cycle and as soon as we start to further cement ourselves into this run, as I believe Dalton Mobley might have made a call to go down pit road. Not sure. I'm still going to monitor to see whether he ends up slowing the car down. He does not, so it was not a call down pit road. But we do have one car down pit road, and it's 61 of Kyle Hammond who's getting a cert.
And you know, you make a good point when you say that Hixenbaugh reaching lap traffic as well as reaching this pit window are pretty much going to coincide with one another. It's going to happen pretty much at the same time. So I got to wonder if maybe that's going to play into his strategy. Maybe he's going to pit a little bit early just to avoid having to deal with lap traffic on these old tires that he's got. If he comes down pit road, he can pretty much avoid dealing with that altogether and hope to cycle out into a bit of a cleaner track. So maybe that's something that's playing into his strategy here, but we're just going to have to see. Hixenbaugh has changed it up. You know, he short stopped it one time. He kind of stayed out a little bit longer the next. But again, I think we've seen the shortstop be the preferred strategy in stage 2. Just about every single driver preferred that strategy and took it. So the 44 now on the bumper of Randy Drumhiller. I'm not saying something's going to happen here, but these guys were not happy with each other on the radio. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on them as Preston McRae continues to drive away as the current Lucky Dog candidate.
Keep our eyes peeled for that, see if anything develops from that as well. Also got a notification and an update that Brandon Pierce has disconnected from the session, so his race is for sure over. He was 20th, 45 laps down, and he was just kind of keeping himself on the racetrack, kind of muster what he could, but I think he decided it was enough for now, and he's gonna be out of this race. He's gonna be possibly 20th from here on out. There's really no other driver behind him that are still on the racetrack, maybe apart from. Actually, no, nobody else is on the racetrack apart from Brandon Pierce, so he won't lose his spot. 20th on back is practically secured through the rest of those spots since they have all decided to bin it and get out of this race, mostly through DNFs and some just electing to end their nights early. Possibly their cars are not performing the way they want to, maybe not meeting minimum speed. So those drivers still are going to try to focus out on Martinsville, especially when you look at the 17 of Christopher Hamann and Zach Probst. Some drivers who were out of this race early. Nicholas Weatherby was out of this race early. Tyler Pinsonialt was also out of this race early. He was making his first start tonight, so unfortunate to see that. Anna Benefiel, who joined this race tonight, also ended early after that first lap incident. Ryan Samuelson, Andrew Russo. Now, everyone's down pit road. Hixenbaugh decides to go down pit road. Cameron Stone's down pit road, and Cameron Caldo now as well. So top 3 altogether down pit road. Wayne Grassi elects to stay out.
I'm a little bit surprised they all elected to pit at the same time. I would have thought one of these guys would have tried to come in a little bit earlier, undercut the competition, get that slight advantage that it offers. But yeah, a cluster of cars coming out at the same time. That leaves Wayne Grassi all on his own with quite a commanding lead that he has inherited from the guys in front of him. So he's going to lead some laps potentially. No, he's going to come down pit road, join the rest of them, get those fresh tires, and get everything sorted out there. And behind him, it's going to be Hickenbottom, who, should he not pit, will inherit the lead.
He will try to inherit the lead, so Hixenbaugh got to try to cycle his way around, and we'll see how everybody else files out, because we have yet to see everybody cycle through. There's Wayne Grassi down pit road. Costarellos also went down pit road. And Kevin Steele now got his lap back. So this is interesting to see now that these drivers are lapped down. Will they decide to stay out further so they can do something in that case? And actually, no, It's not the case for Kevin Steele. He's going to go down pit road. Almost had a moment with Joseph Lesser. They're going to be side by side even. Preston McCrabe also makes his way down. Damaris Hickenbottom also made his way down as well. So lots of these drivers making their roundabouts. Randy Drumhiller also went down pit road. So it's going to cycle back through. I think Rich Petrucco has yet to pit at this time.
Joseph Lester was sliding his tires. A lot of tire smoke as he entered the pit road. Kevin Steele got a little bit sideways as well. You mentioned they almost had a moment, and yeah, they came really close to coming together there. I'm not sure if either of them sped on entry. They made a valiant attempt to slow it down. If they actually reached the speed limit, that is going to be really impressive. As you see Damaris Hickenbottom working his way off pit road. He's got his service complete. He's going to join the rest of the competition back on the track. There goes Randy Drumhiller also making his way out of the pits. And here comes Bryson Hicksonbaugh, who has already pitted, and he is going to be working his way through the quad oval into 1 and 2, and he is back in the lead.
Back to the race lead goes Hicksonbaugh, going to try to carry on and continue his dominance tonight. There's Randy Drumhiller to the bottom of the racetrack. He just exited pit road. There's Costarellos, who they're all down and actually 2 laps down this time around. So we're going to see as Hicksonbaugh tried to get around the 34th. Chad Edwards had to split it to the top and the bottom with Costarellos. That could have been close. Almost had contact with the 34 Toyota Camry there. And luckily, that moment went by in a flash, and he was not able to get any contact from it. Oh, man, that would have been very, very close. Also could have been a product of maybe could have been the case of a yellow flag if that was any worse than it was. But luckily, no contact, no harm, no foul. We stay green as Hicksonbaugh now has a 7.0 second gap over Cameron Stone, his teammate.
It's a terrifying prospect to be 3 wide with lap traffic as the leader. But Bryson Hicksonbaugh was able to work his way around the outside and cleanly navigate it, about as cleanly as you can navigate 3 wide at a track like Texas. And he is pretty much safe in the lead right now, 7.4 seconds back to second place. That's his teammate Cameron Stone. Cam Caldwell behind Stone by about 3 seconds. So this big separation we've noticed has continued as this race goes on. In the garage, Kyle Amon is out of the race. We just received word. So another victim to this tough race circuit that we have been racing at all night long. Wayne Grassy back in 4th after everything is cycled out. He's 18 seconds back. What I'm looking at right now is the last car on the lead lap, 25 seconds back, Damaris Hickenbottom. He is at risk of going a lap down. When that happens, there'll be 5 cars on the lead lap. And the battle for the lucky dog is going to be even tougher than it has been thus far.
It's going to be tough to see what these drivers do. Now we're at lap 283, still a long way to go. I'd say about 50 or so laps to the end of this race. And now there's just 6 cars on the lead lap. Remember, we're at a high of 8 after that pit cycle in the second stage. Now we're down to 6. So the field over the course of these green flag runs, and it's really what we've seen all season, Andre, where we get these situations where one driver is so dominant, they have such a gap over the rest of this field, and then pit cycles come in, they're able to lap so many drivers down the road where they can just limit their competition just like that by lapping them instead of any other route where if they, let's say if they got into incidents, that could be a reason why I can limit the field, but he's limiting the field by lapping the entire field. So remember, he's done this once already, Andre. He did this once, and we saw how intense that was, where he lapped the entire field apart from himself, and that was an accomplishment that we had really never seen before at all in any league or any other series that at least I've broadcasted, Andre. And it's a testament to how just dominating how the 63 can really just take control of a race so easily and flip the switch in a matter of moments.
He wasn't the only one to do it either. I mean, Cameron Stone, his teammate, also lapped the field, nearly doing it twice a few weeks back. And Team Highside is just absolutely, I think, in a fantastic place. And they have been all season long. They have been the guys to beat. And a lot of it comes down to setup. Some of it comes down to just talent and track knowledge. And it's been tough for the competition to try and keep up. That's why it's so impressive when you have guys that are, real talent. Look at Adam Benefield, who was a peak antifreeze series driver. He's come in this league, and still, even he has struggled to go toe-to-toe with Bryson Hicksonbaugh. So it's just really interesting to see develop. And that's one of the things I love about esports in general, and especially on iRacing. It's just watching talent work their way up through the ranks and progress and just really display what they can do. And that's the beautiful thing about esports is, we can't all buy a stock car. We can't all go get involved in real NASCAR or real racing, but most of us can get a computer and try our hand, and it's just a very inclusive thing where we can all give it a shot and show what we can do. So it allows people like Bryson Hixenbaugh to really come out here and just shine. And it's really fascinating to see Bryson Hixenbaugh now right behind the number 30 machine as they make their way down the backstretch. So these guys are pretty much close together as we have a bit of a cluster of lap cars around the leader, and he's going to have to try and navigate them. But I don't think he's going to have too much trouble. He's navigated quite a few lap cars tonight.
And back to that conversation about the esports and how great it is compared to, let's say, the real life competition. Of course, the real life competition is the best of the best, but you go to esports and you see the development of talent from drivers that are very young, drivers all across different ages, different types of demographics, all can get into esports through the same route. You have the PC, you can get that a little setup. It doesn't cost too much to get a basic setup, and some drivers even go full on or full-fledged with their setups and try to get the most realistic feel out of it that they can. It's everything that's customizable about sim racing, because I like to use Bobby Zelensky's Daytona road course performance as one, because you'd expect somebody like Bobby Zelensky, Coke Series driver. He obviously drives the NASCAR stock cars every single other week, almost every Tuesday or every other Tuesday in this series, and he's one of the Pro Series drivers, one of the better drivers in that field. He's won a couple of races to his benefit. He's one of the better road course drivers in that field. If you looked at his camera in that broadcast, you saw that he wasn't using a stock car wheel. He wasn't using any sort of different wheel. He was using a Formula One type wheel. So he was using that kind of wheel to get his way around in a 3,300-pound stock car on iRacing. And it's just a testament to show how you can really customize your setup for any kind of type of car, any type of venue, any type of event. And whether you're comfortable with it or not, you can make it work, and you can still be just as fast as the best of them. And it's crazy how esports have grown within the past couple of years, especially this year with the pandemic, and how this service has practically exploded. The Pro Invitational, when we watched that, of course, the past couple of weeks, that enabled a lot of people to go over to iRacing, get their subscriptions, and get their runs through. Cody Bird just said over the radio he's going to be pitting this time, so he's going to complete his cycle. I believe he's taking about 2 stops, or maybe even about 1 or 2 stops from these stages, as opposed to obviously the rest of the lead lap drivers. But Bird just trying to hang on right now in 15th.
Going back to what you said about the different rigs that people use for sim racing and the customizability, it even comes back to drivers like Shane Neal, who drove in real life and who was obviously, unfortunately, paralyzed in an incident years ago. He lost the function of his legs from the waist down. He actually had a handicap sim rig built custom for him, and now thanks to iRacing, he can actually hop on and sort of simulate racing with them, which is just a really awesome thing to see. And you just don't get that anywhere else. These esports really are something, and you can't appreciate it enough. But right now, I'm a little impressed with this 30 car. Obviously, he's on fresher tires slightly, but he is really holding his own against the 63. These guys have been nose to tail pretty much for the last 5 laps. Big wreck on the backstretch. Caution flies, and the whole picture has changed.
Got our car around in our first yellow since those long green flag runs, and I believe it is Dalton Mobley. It is. And the number 77 machine went around off turn 2, had a meeting with the inside wall. Here's a look at the replay. Got tagged by Jimmy Costarelos along the way, and then goes into the inside wall, and then caution waves with just 40 laps to go in this event. We were definitely not expecting a yellow to come out from here on out, considering the trend that we had. Here's an aerial shot of the contact. Just too close off turn 2. There it is. Digs into the quarter panel, and around he goes. And now this really changes the whole game up, because he had this long run strategy. Now the opportunity is for drivers to go down pit road, but even worse in Kevin Steele's scenario, he's 3 laps down. So this was way too late for a yellow flag.
And cautions breed caution. So drivers like Cam Caldwell, who do have the short run setups, Wayne Grassy even, if we were to get a couple more cautions and this race ended on a few 15 to 20 lap stints, that is hugely to their benefit. That is possibly something that could win them the race with the setups they have. The leaders are making their way down pit road. Bryson Hixenbaugh makes that hard left turn. Cameron Stone as well. By the way, your lucky dog for that caution was indeed Preston McRae. So once this all settles out under caution, he's going to take that one lap around at full speed, catch up to the tail end of the field, and he will be able to participate on the lead lap when we go green.
Yeah, so he's going to be back on the lead lap. There's Bryson Ixenball down pit road. So he's getting his service in that first pit box. And remember, there's just only 7 cars on the lead lap. So it's back to the same scenario like we saw last time when we had that stage 2 yellow. Only 7 drivers on the lead lap. So all separated through and practically all the same, apart from Petrucco. Maybe has the edge. I'm not sure whether he got an inch over Wayne Grassy there. He does, actually. So Petrucco gets that spot. A good battle there off pit road between for position number 4. And Damaris Hickenbottom will follow through to 6. Drumhiller 7th. Now McRae getting back on the lead lap will be 8th. So he's back on the racetrack trying to find his way back around. And we'll have every other driver skip down pit road who is a lap down or more, starting with Costarelos and the rest of the field behind them. So now we have a yellow, Andre. Kind of split everything up from what we expected. There's 39 laps to go. We did see when we had yellow flag restarts, we had a lot of drivers bunched up together on short runs. Is this something to expect or something now to keep our eyes peeled for now that we're in this situation with a restart kind of later in this race with, I'd say, going back to green around 37, 36 laps ago?
I tell you, I couldn't tell you. I'll tell you I couldn't tell you because it is incredibly unpredictable at this point. With so few laps remaining, and these drivers that have the short run setups are hungry. They know that this is their chance. This is exactly the scenario drivers like Cameron Caldwell wanted, was a caution late into the race, although they probably wanted one a little bit later because their cars can really only hold the lead for about 20 laps before that 63 seems to come to life. So they're hoping for probably one more caution about halfway between now and the white flag. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But we know these guys are going to be pushing hard. 100%. They're going to give it everything they have. And whereas we've seen a lot of guys just sort of get pushed up to the high side and think, well, I don't have the preferred line, so I'm going to let off the throttle and I'm going to fall back single file. I don't think we're going to see as much of that anymore. When somebody gets forced high or we see 2-3 wide racing, they're not going to give up quite as much. They're going to stay in the throttle. They're going to give it everything they have to try and edge out that track position, even if they don't have the preferred line, which is going to lead to some pretty chaotic action, I think. But we'll have to see, man, because everybody has different ideas of how to approach a stressful situation like this, because that's what it is. It's stressful when a caution comes out this close to the end of the race. These drivers have been in a rhythm for so long. We've had so many green flag laps, and now that rhythm has been completely disturbed. So we're just going to have to see how it plays out. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting, and that is a great point that you make, is that the rhythm gets disrupted within that yellow, and it could often do it very quickly when a yellow comes out because you're in that muscle memory situation. You already know what you're doing, especially in the case of Ixenball and a lot of these other drivers when they separate, is that you have all that separation in order to have that muscle memory, have that rhythm built up, and you already know what to do. You already know how to handle this corner to this corner, what to do in the throttle now as the run already progressed, and you already went through the deal of the tires wearing, and now the tires are at their worst and they're wearing the most, and then you can already kind of get used to it then. But then yellow comes out, you have to go down pit road, and you're back on the fresh tires, which is, in odd sense, when you're so long without fresh tires, it feels kind of odd that you're back onto it. You kind of forget how it feels. You're kind of more careful about what you can do now on those fresh rubber. But interesting thing here on this restart, Bryson Ixenball has chosen the outside lane for this restart. Now, we've seen him jump out to the front so many times, but the outside line with his teammate on low, I'm not sure what the situation might be, maybe to block both lanes, but even then, it still would have been the same way the other way around.
It's an interesting call, but I mean, we've seen Bryson Ixenball do some sort of unexpected stuff with these restarts before. I mean, back at Las Vegas, it seemed like he chose a different lane every single restart, and I never figured out a pattern or rhyme or reason to it. So I think that's just Bryson being Bryson. But right now, the pace car getting ready to make that hard left turn is a lot of the drivers still joking around on the radio about keyword, saying things like Richard Petty and things like that. They're getting the green flag. Bryson Ixenball gets that huge jump that he's pretty much become known for doing on these restarts. Cameron Stone filing in right behind him under pressure from Rich Petrucco as they make their way through 1 and 2.
And we're back under green, and I believe it's clean through 1 and 2 for practically the entire field as Cameron Caldwell makes a move for second all the way to the white line at the bottom. He's going to look there under the 57's door. He's going to have the space, so move the 12 back to second place. Going to try to run down the 63, and this is really the first time we see the 63 kind of maintain himself and have a gap this time from Cameron Caldwell. He's going to try to pick that up once again. Meanwhile, Wayne Grassy up in fourth, probably has some pressure with Damaris Hickenbottom. Kind of goes wide into 1 and 2, going to try to catch up to the top 3, but they're all single file from now.
Playtime is over. No more patience, no more games. Cameron Caldwell is giving it everything he has. The last time around, he ran about 0.3 of a second faster than Bryson Hickenbottom. This time around is going to be a similar story as he has completely closed the gap, and he is on the bumper. Going into 1 and 2, he's going to look high, but of course we know that's not the preferred line. He's going to drop back down to the bottom. And of course, throttling down the banking is going to give him a run on exit. But where can he take this run? Can he make something happen going into 3 and 4?
He's going to try to look to the bottom, but does he have enough space? I don't think the answer is yes. He almost had to pinch. The 63 almost did. And now the 57 will catch back ground. Hickenbottom, though, looks for fourth. He's underneath the 7 of Wayne Grassy, and he will most likely take that spot. Top 3 all bunched together. Cameron Stone in that number 57, you see him now a little bit behind the 12. The 12 is just pretty much in a high side sandwich at this point, trying to get by the 63, and it is tough. It's very tight. Now the 7 will go back to the inside of the 09.
Oddly enough, the 12 car got a little bit loose on entry of 1 and 2. That's not really where we've seen a lot of drivers struggle, but he did get a little loose. That made it so he couldn't attempt the overtake there, but now coming through the quad oval, he can attempt the overtake. He is door-to-door on the outside. He's going to come down the track a little bit, try to get the side draft. Not quite going to be enough. Bryson Hickenbottom is going to get back clear, but can he throw the crossover? I think we've seen time and time again, 3 and 4 is definitely the turn where you want to set up your overtake. So if he can get a run coming out of this corner and get to the bottom through the quad oval, that is going to be the way he can take the lead. Anything else is kind of a risk. Trying to take the high side, I'm not sure there's enough momentum up there, even on fresh tires, even with a short run setup. So he's going to have to try to find his way to the bottom, even if he has to use the bumper to do it.
He is smothering the back bumper of the 63. You saw there, and he continued to see it on the back bumper camera as he was all over the 63's back bumper down the front straightaway. And like I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, if you want to make a pass at a track like Texas, you have to do it on the straightaways. You can't really execute it in the corners, and that's really what Cameron Caldwell has been focusing on, trying to get the best exit, gets the best momentum, and he's got space to the inside on the front straightaway to the quad oval. Try to take over the race lead. They're still even in a 1 and 2, but he edges him out front off turn 2. Cameron Stone's going to follow suit to the bottom. So new race leader, Cameron Caldwell. Question is, how long does it last?
An absolutely textbook move by the 12, and quick thinking by Cameron Stone to just tag along behind him. That trapped the 63 of Bryson Hickenbottom on the high side, dropping an additional position. Now that puts the 12 car in a little bit of a safer spot. Obviously, anytime the 63 is behind you, your position is at risk. But we've seen time and time again that 57 doesn't quite have the speed the 63 does. So if the 12 has that separation, he has Cameron Stone creating that sort of barrier between him and Hickenbottom. That's going to allow him to build up as much of a lead as he can possibly get. And remember, there's not much of this race left. We're on lap 306, coming to 307, so it's going to be 28 to go when we cross the line. And right at the tail end of this run is about when the 12 car is going to start to fade due to that short run setup. So it's going to be close, and I think if Bryson Hickenbottom wants to get back to the point and win this race, he's going to have to play it perfectly from here on out.
Caldwell really has to make this change now more than ever, because if he did the same thing in stage 1 and stage 2 where he had quick short run speed but then he would fall on the long run, he cannot do that now. Unless he is predicting another yellow there, he could probably be better off and he can have that advantage on the short run speed. But if not, if we stay green throughout the rest of this race, Caldwell is in a vulnerable position, because if the 57 and 63 are better on the long runs, they're going to find their way by at some point. They're going to catch up to that 12. They're still within distance of the 12, even early in this run. So it's still going to be a challenge for that 12. He needs to change what he's been doing all night long, now more than ever, because he's just going to be here and he's going to be falling positions. He does not want to be falling positions. He just wants to stay up here the entire way through, and I'm not sure what that 12 might be doing in his in-car to try to change up that strategy.
The viewers at home might think that Bryson Hickenbottom and Cameron Stone are going to play nice together simply because they're teammates, But one thing to be noted is that it has been announced that at the end of the season, Bryson Hixenbaugh and Cameron Stone will be parting ways. They'll no longer be teammates. And obviously, Cameron Stone wants to do everything he can to get the championship for himself before he leaves the team. So I don't think there's going to be too much team orders or team friendliness between these two. They're going to give it everything they have. And if they continue to battle it out, again, that only plays in Caldwell's favor, as these three have started to break away ever so slightly from the pack. The number 7, Wayne Grassy, tailing by about 2 to 3 car lengths going into the corner. It's going to be an absolute brawl, I think, for this lead. I mean, you got 3 guys who absolutely are driving for themselves, driving for a championship, and they all have different cars. You got to think Cameron Caldwell with the short run setup, Bryson Hixenbaugh in the back with the long run setup, and Cameron Stone, whose car seems to be somewhere in between. Now contact, the 57 puts the bumper to Cameron Caldwell, and they're 3 wide for the lead coming down the backstretch.
3 wide coming into turn 3. It does not last long as Caldwell will find himself back to the front. Hixenbaugh, though, will look to the outside of his fellow teammate, and they have been at it these past couple of laps. They've been able to get by, or at least close to that number 12 machine, but not to mention that 7 is still back there as well. Wayne Grassy, if any of these drivers get into it, that 7 can benefit, and he can spoil the party, trying to take a race win away for himself. Off turn 2, Caldwell gets tagged, but he saves it, though. Cameron Stone will take over the race lead. Here comes Wayne Grassy for position.
Cameron Stone came across the radio and apologized. He said, "Great save. I didn't mean to do it. I think it was netcode." So an incidental bump. I don't think he meant to do it, but of course, at this level of competition, you have to push as hard as you can, and things like that sometimes happen. We're going to take a look at a replay, see exactly what transpired between Cam and Cam as they come through 1 and 2. Just a little bit of a tap. Cameron Caldwell narrowly being missed by the 63, ultimately able to recover, dropping only a couple spots, but not the position he wanted to be in. He was a favorite to win the race. He was in a great spot, leading the way with a car between him and Bryson Hixenbaugh, now dropping back with his car fading as the short run setup continues to let him down when the laps continue on. Bryson Hixenbaugh now in P2, trying to run down his teammate and future rival at the end of the season for P1. Cameron Stone getting loose out of the corner and into the wall. His right rear quarter panel leaving sparks on the hood of the 63 as they scrape their way down the backstretch, and that's going to allow the 63 to close the gap. He's there, Ken.
It is a melee between this top 3, but now it's just down to 2 as Hixenbaugh now finds his way to the outside. The 57 did tag the wall to the outside retaining wall of turn 2. They'll be side by side. Will the 57 have enough momentum? And he does. Cameron Caldwell could benefit from this, although he did get tagged, now he's back to 3rd. If these two continue to battle and they roughen each other up, that 12 can be back in the picture, and certainly he is still within a couple of car lengths. Hixenbaugh, though, goes to the inside, so Hixenbaugh back to the lead with 20 laps to go.
Cameron Stone did everything he could to defend that lead. When the 63 got to his bottom, he did turn down and try to pinch him on the entry, but ultimately it just wasn't enough to stop the force that has been Bryson Hixenbaugh this race, all race long. And now Caldwell even getting back around Cameron Stone as they're side by side for 2nd place. The question is, now that Caldwell's clear of Stone, does he have something? We've got 19 laps to go. Can he close that 0.5 second gap to the leader?
He's got to make a statement within these next 18 laps or so as they just cross the line. Hixenbaugh, now within a couple of car lengths, is now up to about half a second between those two. 0.553 the last time by, and 0.759 to the 57 behind them. Meanwhile, if you looked back at paying attention to these top 3, Damaris Hickenbottom has found his way to 4th. So into the top 5 he goes, and our top 4 are occupied with all red banners and playoff drivers trying to go for a championship.
And these guys stand to gain massively in the points. Look at the running order. The next closest playoff driver is Kevin Steele in 13th, 3 laps down. So these guys are going to gain a lot of points. And we know Cameron Caldwell put himself in a similar situation last week where most of the playoff drivers were further down the grid due to wrecks, incidents, things like that. And he was able to finish well and get a lot of points. He's looking to repeat that maneuver and further his points gap and secure himself, hopefully, into the top 4.
Here's a battle further back. There's Wayne Grassy, Randy Drumhiller. This is all for P4, but for P5, it is the 30 underneath the 7. Rich Patrico had a little bit of a run in that short run. He had some momentum to his side, but then he then fell back. He is now 7th on the racetrack right now. Last car sitting on the lead lap is Preston McRae. I don't think from here on out, we will see any drivers get their laps back, considering that the driver, the 2 laps down, Jimmy Costarelos, as you see him now on pit road. That's the reason he's 2 laps down. He was 1 lap down at one point through this restart, but now down to 2, maybe almost 3 as he's down pit road on the exit. But Hixenbaugh now kind of running away with this, is now up to about a second between the 2 drivers, and every time Hixenbaugh has been able to get to the lead, he's been able to gap everybody else and kind of stretch away from everyone and maintain his lead, grow his lead further, and just continue to dominate the way he has been. 15 laps to go off turn 4. Now the line 14 more times for Hixenbaugh to get it done.
And Bryson is hoping that this race stays as green as his car is, because if he gets another yellow, that's just another chance for Cameron Caldwell to get a jump on the restart and attack for the lead. But right now, it is the 63 pulling away like we've seen so many times before. He is just extending this gap lap after lap. 1.3 seconds now. It was 1.1 just a lap ago. So a lot of speed out of the 63. And behind him, nobody really has anything for him. And honestly, we're getting a little bit more separation. So for a lot of these guys, their hopes of winning this race are starting to fade. And they're going to need a caution if they want something to happen.
Especially for Cameron Caldwell, he needs a yellow. So a lot of these drivers need yellows at the moment to even try to get back up to the front, where Hixenbaugh has been practically all night long. And now at the final stage of this race, it looks to be Hixenbaugh just running away with this, barring that we have a yellow from there. As a little bit of contact there, Cameron Stone had a moment with Hickenbottom and Drumhiller. He'll fall back more positions, and it's gone from bad to worse on this one for the 57. He tapped that wall. He almost had a moment with Cameron Caldwell. Now he gets very wide on the exit of turn 4, has a moment there, and now he's falling back to 7th, and now almost 8th to Preston McRae.
I think Cam's just got to take it easy. His car is starting to go away. He's got a good gap in points. He's pretty much secure in the top 4, barring disaster. So right now, with how many cars are a lap down, really the furthest down the grid he can get if he doesn't wreck is only P8, which is still a fair amount of points. So he just needs to get that thing to the end. Obviously, Cameron Stone's a very aggressive driver. He wants to win at any cost. But sometimes you got to be patient. Aggression is very helpful in motorsports, but sometimes you got to know when to flip it off. So I think right now his best bet is just to regroup as Cameron Caldwell continues to drop back little by little to Bryson Hixenbaugh. The gap not growing too quickly. It's now 2.3 seconds. Maris Hickenbottom in a podium position once again up in P3, 4 seconds back from the leader. So it's a high side 1-3 with Caldwell to spoil the party.
So Hixenbaugh now to 2.29 seconds. All Cameron Caldwell has to do is just hold on at this point, and he'll get significant points from this as well. He really won't be at a loss, apart from obviously the race win. Of course, every driver wants to win a race, but if you're talking about points battle, if you're talking about the points racing, Cameron Caldwell is in one of the best situations ever, since Hixenbaugh has such a large gap that it really does not matter. He's not really going to pass Hixenbaugh in the standings unless he wins, and Hixenbaugh most likely was going to clinch himself into the championship for even just 5 points without even having to need to win this race. So it's been all smiles and all great for Hixenbaugh, and for Caldwell, I think it's not something to be complaining about if this goes green and if the positions change the way they do. But you're looking at a battle now for 3rd. Now that Cameron Stone's not in the picture, Damaris Hickenbottom was occupying 3rd, but Randy Drumhiller, Wayne Grassi, and now the 27 of Rich Petrucco are finding themselves in this group. So a 4-car kind of group here as they're looking to turn number 1. Randy Drumhiller takes over podium.
These guys are not letting anything go. They are definitely pushing each other for this 3rd spot. Randy Drumhiller getting clear of the pack behind him, but still a lot of battling as Rich Petrucco looks low. He swerves to try to make a move on the 7, and Wayne Grassi throws a very aggressive block. It worked out in the end. He was able to keep his spot, and now he's going low on Damaris Hickenbottom, trying to secure P4, and then hopefully, in his case, hunt down the number 30. But right now, I think it's the 30's game to lose for this podium position, because with these guys battling it out, he should be in the clear to try and drive away.
And he should be in position for highest finishing non-playoff driver if he stays there. He's still got some non-playoff drivers to fight, though, with Wayne Grassi and Rich Petrucco being those drivers. But other than that, if the 30 can maintain himself to the end, as we got a yellow on the racetrack with 7 laps to go. Yellow to break things up, and a possible situation to help Cameron Caldwell out from here on through the rest of this race to the checkered flag. I believe the yellow was a result of Jimmy Costarello's, I think. He was possibly the reason for the yellow, and just comes to a stop on the racetrack. But I think iRacing said that that was enough to trigger the yellow flag. So we're going to re-rack the field, possibly have drivers down pit road. And now things change from here on out. It's not just over for Bryson Nixonball yet.
This has changed everything. Because the question is, do you pit? Do you take tires? Obviously, we mentioned that tire wear is excessive at this track because I mentioned earlier, lap 20 at this track feels like lap 40 at any other track. So I think pitting and getting tires is more beneficial here than almost any other mile and a half on the circuit. So the question is, who's bold enough? Really, with only 8 cars on the lead lap, because nobody's getting lucky dog, the next car a lap down was two laps down. Everybody, I think, is going to have to pit. You have to take tires here, and if that's the case, that's Cameron Caldwell's benefit. He has been the quickest short-run car all night long, and now it's a battle.
So the lead lap car is going to make their trips down pit road. Does anyone stay out? No, they do not. Hixenball will lead them all down, and fresh tires for this top 8. And then obviously the rest of the drivers who are laps down will pit next time by. They'll have their share at pit service. So now it's just a focus on these drivers here in the top 8, because everyone here in this group has had strength through this race, whether it be from the top 10, whether it be from the top 5, or whether it be from dominating fashion in the lead for Hixenball. There's a case for each and every one of these drivers. I'm sorry, Andre, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ken. I was going to say an update on Jimmy Costarellos, the cause of that caution. He says it was technical difficulties. His monitor went black, so he did the only thing he could think to do, which was pull to the inside and immediately tow the car to the pits, which absolutely was the right move. You can't do anything more than that once your screen shuts off. When you can't see, I mean, to even be able to get to the bottom of the track and safely stop is impressive in its own right. It's just unfortunate for these front runners, or at least these drivers who were hoping for the run to continue, that was warrant enough for the game to call a caution, which kind of shows some inconsistency. Remember earlier, Chad Edwards, he spun down into the inside retaining wall, acquired some damage. He kept it rolling ultimately, which is probably why it stayed green. But 2 single car incidents, and this one was determined to be a yellow. So kind of interesting development here, and it has changed everything, and I think definitely made things more fun to watch coming up.
Definitely did. So we'll have a restart, I believe, with about 3 or so laps to go left in this race, or maybe even less, but this will be an organic restart here, so we won't be pushed in overtime just yet. If we have a yellow from there on out, then we'll be pushed in overtime, and we'll have to deal with our situations there. But for right now, it'll just be an organic yellow flag or an organic restart with a handful of laps remaining. But this is the perfect recipe, the perfect storm for Cameron Caldwell, because you had this short run speed, you've been able to be successful and hold off Hixenball for at least maybe 3, 4, 5 laps. With this amount of time left, Caldwell can still do the same thing, barring that Hixenball doesn't do anything really bold to take over the race lead back if Caldwell ends up taking the race lead away. So Caldwell, if he's able to get out front, he definitely has potential to hold that 63 at bay, at least for just a couple of laps. It's only been on the long run where Hixenball has shined. He's been his best, and he's been able to just get by the 12 and get away from the rest of this field. But in this short run, he's been clustered. He's been with a bunch of drivers around him, especially Caldwell has put in the pressure. That certainly affects that 63's way of trying to defend his position, because he can get a mind game. All of a sudden, the 63 makes a mistake, and then everyone else can try to freight train him and take position away.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And one thing to note, too, is Wayne Grassy is another car with short run speed, and he's starting not far behind the leaders. So it's not just Cam Caldwell who's going to benefit from all of this going down. Wayne Grassy has had speed all night long. I've said he's kind of been working, and he's shown to be definitely in contention if the cards fell in his favor, if things went just right. And, well, things went just right. This is exactly the kind of situation that he and Caldwell were hoping for. And now they just have to capitalize on it. They have to make sure that they perform at their peak and that they're able to get around the 63, hold them at bay, and utilize their short run setups to the best of their ability. We're going around one more time. They're racked and stacked 2 wide all the way back. and it looks like Bryson Ixenbaugh has elected to take the inside row this time.
So actually disregard what I said about the organic yellow flag. So they will be extended into a green-white checkered. So this will count as the first attempt for a green-white checkered. And obviously, if we take this green flag here and we do not get the white flag and a yellow comes out, we'll re-rack them again, try 2 more times up to 3 attempts until we finalize our attempts, and we'll just end the race there. The field will be frozen. If the leader does take the white flag, the race will be official from there on out. No yellow will be called, and everything will be official when they go back to the start-finish line and will be crowned a race winner here at Texas Motor Speedway in the round of 8 for the 2020 Galaxy Cup Series. And it is on high tension at the moment between Ixenbaugh and Cameron Caldwell. Cameron Stone just a little bit further back, but it's still not over till it's over. That 57 can easily scoop through all those drivers and get back up to the front, and we'll see what happens. Pace car decides to go down pit road, maybe for the final time. Ixenbaugh will go on the lap pedal. We are back under green on a green-white checkered attempt from Texas.
They're going to attempt to make it back to the white flag. Ixenbaugh with a great jump. He's going to get about a 2-car length lead over second place. Cam Caldwell still trailing right in his tire tracks. Again, we've seen Caldwell make moves really quickly, but we haven't seen him get around Bryson Ixenbaugh in just a matter of 1 to 2 laps. So he's going to have to really, hastily do this if he's going to make it happen. Behind him, a lot of battling going on, which is slowing that part of the pack down, which is only allowing these two to drive away. So right now, as they take the white flag, it's between Cam Caldwell and Bryson Ixenbaugh.
One more time around Texas. They're battling for third on back, but it does not matter to Cameron Caldwell. He's got the draft, he's within distance, and he's got 2 more corners to make it happen. They're blocking down to the back straightaway, all the way to the bottom. One more time in a 3 and 4. Does Caldwell have enough to get up to the back bumper? Off turn 4, he might have a run here to the front straightaway. It's going to be a melee up front, but it's going to be Ixenbaugh with a 14th win in the Galaxy Cup Series season and further cementing his spot into the Championship 4. He'll fight for a title at Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. A battle for the ages here in the Lone Star State, and he's going to be slinging those guns and shooting them up in the air with a cowboy hat on in victory lane tonight.
It was a valiant effort. He had a huge run coming out of 3 and 4. I think if he had 1 more lap, he might have made it happen. I mean, just a phenomenal run by the 12, and I'm sure the second place is probably really disappointing in the moment. But ultimately, it was a great showing of skill and ability all night long, and a great points day. That's the other thing not to overlook. The 12 car has only further cemented the gap in points that he has. So really a good night for these top 4 finishing playoff drivers.
And the 63 will burn it down on the front straightaway. Randy Drumhiller will finish 3rd. He's the highest finishing non-playoff driver tonight. So he will at least get his prize there. And what a fight from him to defend all those drivers behind in order to take that podium spot. Gonna take a look at your race results and see exactly where everyone finished tonight after 334 laps, or at least 336 extended laps here at Texas Motor Speedway. Bryson Ixenbaugh with a 14th win this season. He locks himself into the Championship 4 with this one tonight. He led 246 laps en route to this victory. Cameron Caldwell on a valiant effort. All creds to that number 12 machine. He comes home 2nd. Randy Drumhiller, as I mentioned, finished 3rd. Demaris Hickenbottom and Cameron Stone will be 4th and 5th. Other 2 playoff drivers as well. Rich Petrucco will come home 6th. Wayne Grassi will finish the 7th car in 7th. Preston McCray will come home 8th. He'll be the last car on the lead lap before you get to Dalton Mobley and Alex Princeton rounding out this top 10.
Looking back behind your top 10 through your top 20, Joseph Lester and the Hammer 9 machine is going to bring it home at P11. Kevin Steele, a playoff driver with a disappointing night, finishing 12th. He struggled with that car all night long, and unfortunately was just never able to get that thing the way he wanted it. Cody Bird finishing 13th, 5 laps down. Jeremy Morrison in that 22 machine, P14. Eric Wineland, after an early incident, rallying back up to 15th. Jimmy Costarellos, after his screen went dark and he had to emergency maneuver down to the bottom lane and tow his car, is going to wind up P16. Ryan McDaniel, P17. Chad Edwards, P18. Kyle Lamont in 19th. And rounding out your top 20 is Brandon Pierce.
Back to 21st on back, and in 21st position, you'll find Christopher Hamann in the 17, a very very rough night for him. He's going to lose a lot of points in the process. Jason Taylor comes home 22nd. Dakota Null in the 36th after that lap 1 incident will finish 23rd. Patrick Muse will come home 24th. Zach Probst also with the damage in an incident on the opening stage of this race. He comes home 25th. Ryan Samuelson will be 26th. Andrew Russo 27th. Adam Benefield with a lap 1 incident 28th. Tyler Pisonialt making his first start 29th. And Nicholas Weatherby will round out the 30 drivers that made this field here at Texas Motor Speedway. When we come back, we'll have more post-race coverage here on 3YTV from the Galaxy Cup Series and all the post-race action, including top 3 interviews and, of course, an interview in Victory Lane with your winner tonight, Bryson Nixonball. So stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up. You're watching the Galaxy Cup Series playoffs on 3YTV. Welcome back to the Galaxy Cup Series from Texas Motor Speedway here on 3YTV. It took an overtime and 336 laps to crown our winner tonight, but it was former 13-time winner, now 14-time winner, Bryson Nixonball, which makes his way into victory lane and locks himself into the championship 4 at Phoenix in 2 weeks. And Bryson, first of all, welcome to victory lane, and of course, what a drive from you, and what a way to run away from the rest of this field throughout this entire race and to hold on at the end. what were your emotions? What were your thoughts in those final segments, especially when you were battling with Stone and Caldwell, and especially those final laps holding off Caldwell?
Yeah, it was a great car this week. Thanks to James Mullins and Andrew Skelnick and all the guys at Nexus for the setups each week. This thing was great on the long run. It had to take care of it on the short run there, and Caldwell was a rocket there for those laps, and he'd be able to get by me and then do the best he could to hold me off there. I was really worried on that green white checkered that he'd get by me, because I knew that I could hold him off for one lap, but he'd get to me turn one of the second lap, and I just had to send it in there, and it stuck for me, and he didn't quite get to me.
Well, it certainly stuck for you, and through this entire race, you had the strongest car all night long. And of course, with this win tonight, with this 14th win in the season, you lock yourself in the championship 4 at Phoenix, and you're going to be running for a title. Of course, you had all the points to prove it, but now you have a win to your name to further save your spot there. Tell us how this feels for you and your team now that you're going to be fighting for a championship, and you won't have to worry about Martinsville next week.
Yeah, it feels good to log myself in. I had a pretty good points cushion that it wasn't too worried about it, but it's good to get the win, get momentum going into the last races of the season.
Well, Bryson, you're going to be fighting for a title at Phoenix, and what a way to do it here at Texas. And before we let you go, is there any sponsors, teams, or just anyone you'd just like to thank for tonight's effort?
Shout out to my teammates, Cameron Stone and Damaris Hickenbottom, for getting 3 cars in the top 5 this week. I had a couple other teammates and friends that had issues today, and at least some of us got to the front there. We all were pretty fast, but it didn't work out for everybody.
All right, Bryson, well, we congratulate you on your phenomenal victory here tonight, and we hope to see you at Martinsville next week. But of course, I know you're looking forward to Phoenix in 2 weeks to run for the championship. So we thank you for taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck now in the championship 4.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you again soon.
Bryson Nixonball is now a championship 4 contender, so he will be one of the 4 drivers. We're just going to find out who the other 3 are next week, at the end of next week at Martinsville. And looking back to P number 2 was a driver who benefited from Kansas and gets a great one here tonight. Cameron Caldwell is on pit road with 3YTV's Andre Grambush.
Mr. Caldwell, you got a copy?
Yep.
Well, Cameron, it has been 2 phenomenal points weeks for you. You've furthered your gap in points up in the top 4. You had a really strong car all night long, and especially that short run speed, which is why when that late race caution came out, we all were waiting for you to make it happen, and you definitely made a great effort at it, and it was a close battle to the end. Can you walk me through what you were thinking and how that car felt in those last few laps?
Well, I was hoping that caution would come out, and as soon as the day my adrenaline shot up, and I knew I had a shot at it. So we pit, and I meant to put another piece of tape on it, but I forgot to do that, and so I think that hurt me a little bit. And the restart itself, I got a good restart, got behind Bryson, and then I hit the apron on the white in 1 and 2, and that just kind of ended my chances, I think. So I think I need one more lap to have a shot at it, but it was a really good race for me overall.
Yeah, you're going into Martinsville with a lot of momentum. Like I said, you've had a lot of great finishes lately, and you're sitting pretty comfortable in points right now, but it's not a sure thing. What's the strategy going into Martinsville? You're going to try to play it safe? Are you going to try to secure a win? And what's the mindset looking forward?
Well, in the springtime, I won both of the stages and then finished second to Stone. I think I can do one spot better, but of course, I just want to make sure that I can make the final 4. So I'm going to take it pretty smartly, but if I can win, I'm definitely not going to pass up that chance.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, and we can't wait to see what you can do on track at Martinsville. If it's anything like tonight, you're going to impress, because we absolutely loved watching the show that you put on for us tonight with some great action out there. Before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank for tonight's effort?
I'd like to thank Valvoline for coming on the car. I've raced this car a couple times now, and I finished second in all the races I've done. So I guess if I want to finish at least second next week, I should probably run it. And then my other sponsors, In the Pits News and C2 Graphics. And yep, that'll be it. Also my Apex teammates, they were coaching me through that last run there.
All right. Well, we congratulate you on your podium finish. and we're excited to see what you can do next week. Thanks for your time, Cameron.
Thank you.
That was your second place finisher, Cameron Caldwell. Now looking back into, I believe, fourth, it's Damaris Hickenbottom. He's with Ken.
And here with Damaris Hickenbottom, you come home with a P4 finish tonight, and you were the third highest running playoff driver when they crossed the line. And you had a lot to do with in that final 2 laps with Randy Drumhiller, Cameron Stone, Rich Pajuco, and Wayne Grassy. Just tell us what that was like behind the wheel of your 09 Ford Mustang, going through all the motion there and facing the music.
I tell you what, Ken, it was, man, trying to catch my breath here. It was stressful, as you can see, man. I mean, we're trying to get around Drumhiller. He just snuck in there on that pit sequence, and I had the speed to get around him on the short run, but when I caught him in one, he had cut me off. So the only recourse I had was to move him. I just didn't think I didn't want to risk it, man. I really needed these points coming into this last race at Martinsville. So I didn't think Texas would be a good track for me. It turns out to be a decent day, but man, on the edge of the seat. Even got into Cam a little bit, so couldn't get around Drumhiller, and then came off 3, and then had to check him a little bit and throw a block on Cam. Luckily, we didn't wreck each other there, but it all worked out in the end. So it's a good run. Glad we brought the Vizio 9 Ford here to a good 4th place, man, and hopefully we can keep it going for Martinsville.
And you mentioned Martinsville and picking up, and you certainly picked up tonight. You started 29th, you finished 4th. You came into this race in the playoff grid 6th in the cutoff spot, at risk of elimination. You go by Christopher Haman and Kevin Steele. You're now, I believe, in 4th in the playoff grid, currently sitting on the bubble. What is needed now at the paperclip in Martinsville next week in order to secure your spot to run for a championship at Phoenix in 2 weeks?
Got to do the same thing, man. Got to execute. I had the race of my life. Like I said, I'm not too good at Texas, but it worked out. And man, no matter how good I was running, Caldwell was always a couple steps ahead of me. So, he had a hell of a run himself. I got to do the same, right? I know what I got to do now. I got to beat Kevin, who's going to be tough. I think he finished 3rd in the spring race at Martinsville, so I'm sure he's going to be there all the way through. And I think I got all the other guys pretty much licked, but we got to nail this setup, and hopefully the guys will get some practice in this week, like we did with Texas a little bit towards the end here, and be fully ready. But just got to stay ahead of that 44, man. He's going to be fast, and hopefully we can sneak into this playoff. And then once we get to Phoenix, anything's possible.
And of course, anything is possible. Before we let you go, Damaris, is there anyone you just like to thank, or any shout outs you just like to give at the end of this race tonight in the checkered flag for your run here in 4th place?
Yeah, man. Shout out to High Side, Dynasty Side. We did it again. So I think we got 3 in the top 5 there. Those guys are invaluable, man. Even shout out to some of the guys over at Apex. We had a joint session. They were willing to share the practice session so we can get some pack racing in this afternoon. So thanks, Kevin, Preston, all those guys over there. That was awesome to kind of know what we really had. Thanks to Jack Setup Shop. I didn't use a set this week, but I did look at it, man, and I kind of use that as a barometer. So Jack's not here with us running today, but just shout out to him, man. All the stuff I've learned from him in the last few weeks. Yeah, I think that's about it, man. Everybody that's watching, thank you guys in the booth as well. Carlos, hit that kazoo for me. Dirt. Thanks for the broadcast, man. I hope we gave you a good enough show and everyone watching.
Certainly, it was a fun show going to the end, especially with you and that whole group. And of course, we appreciate the time, Damaris, and we appreciate all the support. And we wish you the best of luck now going into Martinsville so you can secure a spot in the championship 4.
Absolutely. Maybe we get one of you 3 in the car one of these races after the season's over.
Damaris Hickenbottom comes home P4 in that effort. What a drive from him as well. And he mentioned 3 of the top 5 were Team High Side drivers. And of course, that is Hickenbottom, and Stone, respectively, rounding out that top 5. Andre, we've just concluded our interviews, and now we look forward to the paperclip in the Martinsville Speedway. A very, very short track, and unlike what we saw at Bristol, it's going to be completely different. Andre, your thoughts now for this battle of the championship, now going to Martinsville and being the elimination race at that?
I think the key to Martinsville is going to be staying calm. It's going to be a stressful race, especially for these guys that are on the bubble or stand to fall out of the top 4 in points or potentially make their way into the top 4. Because as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Martinsville is always unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. It's just a breeding ground for chaos. So hopefully those guys can get through it cleanly and have the results that they're trying to get. But either way, no matter what happens, it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be right here on 3 Wide TV.
Certainly going to be exciting, and if you want to catch the rest of the Galaxy Cup Series all the way from Martinsville to Phoenix in the championship event, you can do so next Saturday at next 7:30 p.m. We'll have coverage here on 3 Wide TV of every single lap all the way to the checkered flag until the championship event at Phoenix in 2 weeks. You can check out all the other races if you have not seen them from this season. They're on 3 Wide TV, at least from Michigan on forward. We have all the coverage there for what a tremendous season we've seen so far, all the way through the playoffs. We appreciate and thank each and every one of you in the broadcast for tuning in tonight. We appreciate all the support here on 3 Wide TV. Big thanks to SimTV for providing the camera packages and providing the best views of these virtual race cars all night long. Congratulations to Bryson Ixenbaugh, a 14-time winner here at Texas Motor Speedway. Gets to hold the cowboy hat and shoot some guns in victory lane. So for everyone in the Galaxy Cup Series that make it possible, for owner Josh Coppernall, for directors Brian Mabry and Kevin Steele, for marketing manager Damaris Hickenbottom, and on behalf of us at 3 Wide TV, for my partner in the booth Andre Grambush, and our producer Carlos Acosta, Kenneth Bueno, saying goodnight from the Lone Star State.